Lata, let's go. Mike.
Look up here.
Hello, Mike. We're calling this wonderful meeting to order. It's a great day. If anyone wishes to address the City Council on any item considered at this meeting before or during Council's consideration of that item, please enter your name in the electronic kiosk located in the lobby. The City Council will allocate up to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker for each agenda item. Staff reports are available online at the city's website, cityofreading.gov, and in the public view binder located on the podium at the north side of the chamber. Are any speakers yet? Oh, we got one. Huh? Yeah. There was no reportable action for closed session? Yep. We are going. Pledge of Allegiance, then Patrick Blewett will give us the invocation.
Okay. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir.
Let's pray. As we prepare for this city council meeting, Lord, we ask for your comfort and your wisdom. First, we ask for your comfort and care as many grieve the Charlie Kirk tragedy and prepare for his funeral on Saturday. We acknowledge, like the governor of Utah said, many people loved Charlie and what he stood for, and many people hated him and what he stood for. That polarization grieves us, and it grieves you too, Lord. We acknowledge that part of the fabric of America has been torn. Please forgive us and mend us together as your one people. Oh Lord, give us the grace to allow people to respond and grieve in different ways. Give us the strength to hold our tongues and be gracious when people view the situation differently than us. Give us the courage to speak our own minds when appropriate. Give us the ability to hear each other with our hearts, not just our ears. I would ask, Lord, that you guide us past the grief-born language of "We are Charlie" and into a chorus of distinct voices in mourning. You have made us each different, and you have made us neighbors. We all desire your blessing to be free from fear, to flourish as a community, and to know your peace, O Lord. Lord, we ask that you make us peacemakers in this angry world. Second, we humbly ask for wisdom as members of the community. Give us creativity to dream about what Reading can become. Give us patience with one another and give us freedom to dream together. Lord, we ask that you give this council wisdom as they make decisions that affect this community now and for years to come. Give them ears to hear each other and give them ears to hear the people of Reading. So we invoke your blessing now and on these proceedings, and we ask this in the name of Jesus. And God's people said,
Amen. All right. Let's sit down. All right, we got two speakers. Nick, you're up first?
No.
Oh, what? Okay, sorry, roll call.
Councilmember Audette.
Here.
Danuka is absent. Councilmember Resner.
Present.
Vice Mayor Lata.
Here.
And Mayor Munz.
I'm here, thank you. Now, public speakers. Nick, you can be first. Steve, you're up second.
Well, Barry's retiring, and I wanted to go over some of the accomplishments
Yep.
he's made since he's been our city manager. You know, since he took over, Reading's starting to look like a banana republic. The homeless population has exploded. And, you know, out of the area parolees have been welcomed to our community. And I know that Barry and a lot of other people are aware of it, but they keep denying it. But it's gotten to the point to even the out-of-town parolees are getting angry you're letting so many enter our community. It seems to me that he did keep the local economy moving, because especially if you're in the glass replacement business, because of all the homeless and the vagrants throwing rocks through our glasses, and the guys that build fences, iron fences around our businesses to protect them, they've done awfully well too. They've kept the police busy, hurting the homeless around. And the fire department, 2/3 of their calls are for warming fires by the homeless. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to address that. I ran into a police officer at Costco right around Christmas time. And I asked him what percentage of the calls would he credit to homelessness, the homeless people. I said 50%. He said, no, way more than that. Seems to me a city manager would get on top of that problem and protect their citizens from the problems they create. Our sports park went to hell during Barry's tenure as city manager. But one part of our economy that really blossomed is the need for private security. And then I wonder about the public-private partnerships that seem to come into vogue with Barry. The one that comes to mind to me is Block 7, where 2 blocks in City of Reading was more or less given away for just a pittance, and it was developed by a couple of private entities. And Barry referred to it as a public-private partnership, but the City of Reading's name isn't on any deeds, and they're not getting any of the profits or any of the rents or anything. And I wonder whose idea it was to make Reading a bicycle town. I haven't found anybody that is really in favor of it. And then we've got rebates on bikes, actually giving bikes away and cars away. And now they want an increase in electricity costs. And on top of that, we had the sports park, the soccer loan for about $3.5 million, I think it was, didn't pay back, but now they want an increase. And on top of that, he did do well with the government employees, $20 million worth of raises in the last 2 or 3 years. Thank you.
Good morning, council, staff, community members. Nick, I'm sorry, but Barry doesn't make any of those decisions. Those are all city council decisions. So anyway, about 8 years ago, seeing all the crime that was in the streets at that time, I started coming to these meetings. And so I decided to figure out what was going on. I figured I had to come to these meetings. What were the causes of the huge amount of crime? This was not the city and the county I grew up in. This was something closer to larger cities and areas that are crime infested. So that I could learn more about the situation, I came to the council meetings. And while at the council meetings, I met people like Nick Gardner and was learning that were, instrumental in speaking and involved in the city. And speaking to some of them, in those discussions, I found out it was this easy problem that basically the devil incarnate was our city manager, Barry Tippin, that he was the problem in all this. So that being the case, I decided to confront Barry about some of the problems that existed. Now, to say that the city manager, creates all these problems is kind of ridiculous, because he simply presents information to the city councils, and the city council basically makes all the decisions that Nick Gardner just mentioned. So anyway, I asked him about some of the different problems that I saw, and Barry always had a good explanation, and he always had a good rationale as to why those decisions were made. I came to respect his decisions, and I found that usually when I disagreed with him, I hadn't taken into consideration everything. I've come over time to respect Barry as city manager to the greatest extent. The city council changes as time goes on, but the city manager remains in his position. It was one of Barry's responsibilities to help the new city council adjust to their jobs without making bad decisions before they could be fully informed. I think he's been very successful at doing that. I think that he has saved the city millions of dollars over the years, being able to explain to the council members and other people the ramifications of hasty decisions. I don't believe you can find an individual that has greater knowledge of the city of Reading than Barry Tippin. With that knowledge, he has served the city of Reading very well. Barry, I personally want to thank you for all that you've done for the city, and I want to thank you for your service. I wish you good fortune on your next adventure. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. All right, let's get rolling. Presentations. 2A. Pardon me?
There should be more public comment. I know I signed up on the kiosk.
I don't have it down.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Here we go. Adopt a resolution honoring Barry Tippin for his distinguished service to the city of Reading and associated presentations. That. I get more than 3 minutes, don't I? Good evening, everyone. Tonight we come together to celebrate and honor someone who has left an extraordinary mark on the city of Reading, our city manager, Barry Tippin, who is retiring after 21 years of dedicated service. It's hard to capture a career like this in just a few words, so I'll share a few highlights that speak to the impact Barry has had on our city. Under Barry's leadership, Reading became one of the first cities in California to launch a crisis intervention response team, pairing police with mental health professionals. Barry also worked to modernize the fire department, moving 3 firefighters per engine, acquiring new fire engines, a ladder truck, and improving the fire department's technology, which keeps both firefighters and our community safer. And when our community faced some of its toughest challenges, the Carr Fire, Snowmageddon, and COVID-19 pandemic, Barry guided our response and recovery with steadiness, compassion, and determination. One of Barry's most valuable legacies is the transformation of downtown Reading. From opening Market Street and creating the Market Street Promenade to the Pine Street Lofts, Block 7, Whistle Stop Park, Barry helped bring new energy to the heart of our city. And all while he never lost sight of the importance of housing, from the Woodlands Apartments to the Lorenz Hotel, from Connecticut Court to East Street Senior Apartments, and through multiple micro-shelter projects. Barry made sure that more of our residents had a place to call home. Behind the scenes, Barry pushed forward many substantial infrastructure investments, including major upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant, the expansion of Cypress Street Bridge, the development of Stillwater Business Park, which now houses employers like Amazon and Frito-Lay. He also helped bring more jobs and opportunities through projects like the redevelopment of Mount Shasta Mall, the relocation of Costco, and expanded air service to the Reading Regional Airport, giving our residents direct flights to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, and Seattle. Inside City Hall, Barry is just as impactful. He's created the city's communication team, who are all responsible for all of our press releases, our social media channels, podcasts, the city's website, the city newsletter, basically anything and everything that should be shared with the public. Barry has represented Reading regionally, statewide, and we testified before Congress as director of REU. He has served as the chairman of SHASCOM. You may know them as 911 dispatchers. TANIC, otherwise known as Transmission Agency of Northern California, and I guess BANIC, also known as Balancing Agency of Northern California. Agencies you and I don't necessarily know about because we have good people who handle these things. Speaking of good people, Barry has assembled a highly effective, well-rounded leadership team, the majority of whom have been in their positions for just a couple of years. But well beyond the titles and the projects, Barry has brought vision, steady leadership, and a collaborative spirit that has made Reading stronger. On behalf of the City Council, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Barry, for your leadership, your service, and your unwavering commitment to the people of Reading. You leave behind not just a list of accomplishments, but a legacy that will shape this city for generations. Thank you. So, I know apparently we don't have a clock or anything for you. Anybody want to say anything? Mr. Lataw?
Yeah, I do. I've been here for just under a year, but I firmly believe that the city is better today than what it was when he took over. And from the moment I met Barry, I just felt trusted with this information, his guidance. He was able to answer all my questions, and we're just incredibly grateful for your leadership and guiding us through difficulty over the many, many years in the past before my time when I was here. But I'm just internally grateful, and I don't think we know what we're going to lose until you're gone. And you're going to be very difficult to replace, and I'm grateful for everything you've given to the city of Reading. Thank you. So.
Anybody else? Erin?
I would like to say thank you. Barry is aware of this now because I told him pretty soon when I came onto council that I was pretty judgmental of his choice when he was chosen as the city manager, that I felt like we were rubber stamping someone who had simply moved up the ranks. And I have been thoroughly impressed by your knowledge, by the way in which that you have no problem with me disagreeing with you or agreeing with you. I really, really have valued just your insight and the ability to really have knowledge of virtually every single department. So merely replacing your knowledge and your input is going to be a large shoes to fill. Thank you for your honesty and your candor always.
Well, personally, I would say we've met many, 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 many times. I'm grateful for all that you've done. You've guided us, but you've never tried to persuade me in my decisions. Like Aaron, when we agreed, we have had several disagreements, and we still have disagreements. But I'm very respectful and honored to know you, and grateful to have met you and know you. And I hope that we can be, I know I'll be your friend when we leave. And I'm sure you won't answer all my calls after the end, but, I'm thankful that you answer most of them now. So anyway, thank you very much. All right.
Are we going to get a picture, maybe? Yeah. Do we think so? Great.
We also need a motion on the resolution before we do pictures.
I make a motion that we accept the resolution.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So I'm just making a motion that we accept the resolution as stated.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So pass it unanimously, or was there a? Fiddle? Photo, anybody?
Yeah,
Yep.
let's go.
Mark, you should be in the I'll take the picture, Mark. You get in it. Get in there, Mark. I'll take it.
I am smiling. I will let what was said. Barry always Mr. Mayor, would you mind?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I do not mind.
First, I want to thank Nick for all the amazing powers he thinks I have. So I appreciate that. And you love the city so much, I think you should move into the limits so you can vote for council. So to say the least, I never really expected to end my career under these circumstances. I've always planned to retire in 2025, and that's been long known, to move on to my next phase. Reality, I was going to retire about 7 years ago and decided to stick around. But I never thought I'd finish my career with a bit of character assassination by a council member. It's pretty disheartening, especially when these allegations and accusations are baseless and completely false, seem designed to serve some unknown political agenda and harm our city. And unfortunately, revisionist history is something that seems to be the go-to move for some politicians to wipe away what we all know to be true. I know for certain that we own our individual integrity. As individuals, only we can give it away. What I know for certain is my integrity is fully intact, but I cannot say with certainty that it's the same for my accuser. That said, tonight's not about anger. It's not about bitterness. It's about celebration and gratitude. And none of what I've been able to accomplish, whether you believe it or not, is possible without my wife, Joanne, sitting in the back, and my family with my son, Zach, and daughter-in-law, Gabrielle. They've let me be through these long nights and all the endless meetings and crises that seem to they would never end. They've been my support system. They're my anchor. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart. I thank the council members as well through my 8 years as city manager and before. You've supported me while I support you. You've helped me be successful, and I hope I've done the same for you. And of course, I have to acknowledge Camille. Camille just extraordinarily manages the office of the city manager, and she's our rock. She's our stability. She takes care of everything. She protects us. She's awesome. Thank you, Camille. When I look at my time as city manager, I'm proud of how together we've navigated through many things. Some of them were mentioned, the Carr Fire and its Firenado, Snowmageddon. What wasn't mentioned was the pension tsunami when I first took over. At least that's what I call it. And of course, the global pandemic. And each of these events tested our community in ways that could have broken us, really, but it didn't. It revealed our resilience, our strength, and our ability to adapt. And I think our community is better for it. And I think we have shown some amazing aptitude as a community. But if you ask me what I consider my greatest accomplishment, it isn't surviving disasters. It's building the executive team that now leads the city. They're talented, dedicated, and deeply committed to serving Reading with integrity. They are, without question, the best team I could have ever hoped to work alongside, and our city's future is secure under their guidance. So yes, it's been an honor to serve the city, an honor to work with so many good people who care deeply about this community as I do. It's an honor to have played my part in shaping its present and preparing for the future. So thank you for the trust you've given me, despite the noise of politics, which is deafening at times. I leave my post with pride in what we've accomplished together and confidence in the people who will carry on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. All right, moving on. 2B, presentation by Danny Orloff, Visit Reading's Tourism Marketing Director, providing quarterly report regarding tourism, marketing, and promotional efforts for the city of Reading. Danny?
Thank you. You guys kind of set a vibe with the lights dim real quick when I came up here. It was really cool to see, just right before the presentation came up, you guys got to see the slide of the beautiful area that we live in. No, you don't have to go back. It's the Sundial Bridge with Shasta Valley and the river just running through the town. It's an honor to be up here to be able to represent our city and our community, and I'm excited to highlight some of the things that we've been able to accomplish this past year. Overall, you guys have gotten the annual report from us. Once the Chamber of Commerce took on the Visit Reading contract, there's been a $2 million lift that's been able to stabilize for TOT. Talking amongst my peers in the tourism industry, a lot of them have maintained flat since 2019. So seeing that effort being able to increase and sustain has been awesome. It would be detrimental to anything for happen for the marketing budget for us. We truly understand that marketing and advertising is the fuel for sales, and we understand that we are the megaphone for Reading, and we're that positive light to be able to showcase everybody, everything that we have to offer in this city. As you guys see here with the TOT stabilized, website visitors went up by 14%, and impressions, how many times our ads were seen, was up by 25% in this last year. We got to see positive KPIs from the average length of stay going up by 12%, average night stays going up by 2%, and seeing more repeat guests come to our area being up 10% versus the previous year. We're very strategic with our marketing dollars and want to market to those who are coming to our area. We're seeing more visitation from Sacramento, from Eureka, from Reno, from those areas that are small drive distances to us, in comparison to in the past where it was longer distances such as LA, Seattle, Portland, and other areas. We're excited to be able to use that data to be able to make the strategic decisions so we can have our money last longer and get a stronger return on investment for the investment that you guys put into Visit Reading. We're able to see increase in visitation for hotel occupancy. Today's been a great day overall. Started off the day with State of the City, hearing the impact from Turtle Bay and how that makes our visitors feel, as well as our locals. Being able to see that Sundial Bridge and knowing that that is our icon for our area, and people love to see that. They are thrilled to be able to come to our area to witness a piece of architecture that spans across the river. We also went to My Place. It shows people are investing in our area from a hotel occupancy. It's the first hotel in California from My Place. So it shows people are investing from outside of our area because they see the power of tourism and they see the power that people want to be able to be invigorated when they come to our area. The speeches that they said, they could have picked anywhere in California, but they chose here. We saw an increase in revenue from hotel stays. We did see a fluctuation in short-term rentals, and a lot of that's based on the consumer mindset being in post-COVID, and they want to stay in hotels. They want to be able to have their beds made instead of going to a place where they feel like is at home and live like a resident in that area. They're just shifting into hotels. So we're watching trends overall and seeing that. Sorry for the voice inflection. As you see here, you can see our visitor snapshot for some of the data that we have. Sacramento is our #1 market, San Francisco as well, and California is a big market for us overall. On here, you're seeing the numbers and based on credit card data. We look at multiple different things from analytics from our website, from geofencing from the cell phones, but also credit card data and who's spending it and where they're spending it. Visit California came out with a study, and it shows every dollar in marketing spent relates back to $21 in visitor spend. We understand that having a very fruitful economy is important to us outside of TOT. We're on the cutting edge. We understand that influencers have a stronger voice now than they ever have had in the past. With different forms of advertising, we were able to bring in 7 different influencers, increase our social media presence by up 13%, being able to get a 25,000 followership on Instagram, and being able to reach more than 6,000 people throughout that platform, as well as nearly 40,000 people on Facebook. We understand that they're different markets, and we understand we need to market to people differently across different platforms. Overall, we understand what the consumer wants. These were our top posts. The drag strip, people want to know those aha moments and those historical pieces from our area. The previous year, it was about the geosphere on I-5. This last year is about the racetrack. We also know that people want those authentic moments that are uniquely found in Reading, such as the rodeo, which you see through the 48,000 views and reaching over 33,000 people organically. Our top collaboration post, we understand that we love our area and we want to be able to bring optimism to our area and people to feel invigorated after they leave, and so they can come back and support us time and time again. You see that with the 63,000 people who are watching the mural that was donated to our town to showcase that positive message through Steffi Lynn. And this is all relationship building. She could pick anywhere in the world where she wanted to donate a mural to, but picking Redding, California, it shows something about our area. We're able to have cornerstone campaigns such as Perfect Vacation, funded by Choose Redding Lodging, and it showcased that we're more than just a pit stop on I-5. We're a place that you can stay in multiple days and you can come back to and do multiple things once you come back as well. There's no other place like this. Shasta Lake, Whiskey Town, the Caverns, the dam, the river, the Sacramento River and Rail Trail, our downtown, we have it all here. We're also able to promote local events such as Glowing Wild, Garden of Lights, the rodeo, and you can see those through the different impressions below. We also understand the power of other people's voices and their stronger platforms outside of influencers. Public relations is huge for us. We brought in and hosted over 20 writers. Articles were published more than 57 times with an audience reach of over 27 million people. These are numbers that our team is extremely proud of, and we couldn't do it alone. I want to compliment my colleague, Jennifer. She's amazing. I feel like I'm getting emotional just because it's not just me up here, like it's a whole team effort. But you see that throughout here with the Garden of Lights, with the Venture.com and Men's Journal. These are publications that you don't just get, they're relationship built. Having a strong connection with the city is awesome by turning the new scope from tasks into goals and being able to see those goals and strategically go after them. We did have to adjust from losing PR, that slide that we just saw, based on those budget cuts. And we want to make sure we can put Redding in the most positive light we possibly can. From a marketing agency switch, we also had to do that by losing our optimizer and going into more of a tourism agency, marketing agency. We're diversifying our platforms, and we want to be on the cutting edge of this with AI and with those geofencing, so like checking people's cell phones and knowing if they've came to the area, if they visited, how they've utilized our content, and being able to make sure that we're getting more views from different areas. So that's where you see the Road Trippers icon, Azira, Click Trips, Google, and et cetera. Overall, we can't do this alone. We want to be that positive light and positive megaphone. So you see things like the partnership with REU, being able to paint the boxes downtown. Thank you, Nick, and your team. Able to host networking events, not only to help us, but also help others create better content from pulling in attractions, creators, and accommodations all in one area so they can thrive together. Being able to team up with the Historical Society for cultural sustainability and showcasing things like the Redding Regatta. Also teaming up and showing beautification in our town with influencers, painting a mural right across from Whistle Stop Park to highlight all the beautiful things in our area as a great backdrop for photos and to be able to highlight our history. Also working with the city and multiple partners on Celebrate 20 from the Sundial Bridge. So ultimately making that bridge look pretty darn cool. And then as you guys know from the collaboration, as mentioned earlier in the slide, I'm here for any questions, comments, concerns, but I just want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Danny.
No problem.
Any questions?
Just got one question. I know we cut your budget, which was
Yeah.
painful to do. Being in business, I know the impact that when you cut money from marketing, sometimes you don't see the impact of that for a long time. But have we seen a downward trend in, or are we just not quite at the point where we'll see the impacts of spending less money on marketing? So.
Yeah, we've seen a slight downward trend right now, to answer your question. We are seeing a slight downward trend. A lot of this is going to be longer term. I mean, with cutting PR, that's a huge megaphone. You saw Men's Journal, Adventure.com, USA Today. Those are articles that they cost money to be able to bring the people in to witness things firsthand. So marketing is the fuel for advertising. Marketing and advertising is the fuel for sales, and we're selling our area. So the less money that we're putting into our gas tank, essentially, we're not going as far. So being able to, I would say, double down on helping us market, because we can control the narrative on how we're showcasing our city and enticing more people to come here. So I think marketing is extremely important, to answer your question. Yeah, no problem.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Danny.
All right. 2C, presentation by Christian Church Homes, providing an update on past, present, and future projects and activities in the city of Reading.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for me to tell you about CCH Christian Church Homes. We've been around for 64 years. We have low-income housing in 7 states, managing or owning 46 properties with 3,700 residents living at those properties. Our residents have an average income of $17,000 a year. For 29 of those years, for 29 of the 64 years, we have been in partners with the city of Reading. We started our first property back in 1996 when we took over the Lorenz Hotel. And I'm going to see if I can do this now because I've been given instructions. Well, there, I did it. The Lorenz Hotel, built in 1901, a 100-room hotel with 78 one-bedroom and studios. We converted that over to 78 apartments for low income. The city gave us some home funds with that. That project was $13.5 million. We also made sure that the Lorenz was placed on the National Historical Register. Our next venture was the Treehouse. We built a 62-unit low-income senior apartment complex in 1997. That apartment building, the cost was about $4 million, again, with the City of Reading home funds. Next, we took over the Hotel Reading. I was approached by the City of Reading Police Department back in those days. And that was, the Hotel Reading was built in 1921, a old hotel with 100 units. They came to me in 1999 and said, look, we're having a lot of police calls, a lot of criminal activity. Do you think CCH would come and help us with that? I said, absolutely. We took it over in 1999. By 2002, we opened our doors for 50 low-income residents at a cost of $7.4 million. We operate the 2 oldest hotels in the city of Reading by offering low-income housing in those buildings, as well as 12 commercial spaces that are for local businesses. Our latest venture is our newest crown and jewel there. That's Piper Way. We just opened that with 50 seniors. We worked in conjunction with the First Christian Church, the City of Reading Voucher Program, Shasta County HHSA providing homes for 6 homeless individuals, the California Department for Developmental Service, DDS, Far Northern Regional, we provided homes for 9 developmentally disabled seniors at a cost of about $33.8 million. Our average income there is $1,300 a month for our residents. They average 70 to 81 years old. We wanted to share this information with the City Council to let you know how much we appreciate the partnering that you have done with us throughout these 29 years. We have been able to house 232 low-income housing students, or residents, seniors, that wouldn't have a home without that. We wanted to thank you for that. We wanted to let you know that without our partnership and providing the senior homes throughout this trip that we've made, here's our balcony, we would not have been able to do this. We've added to the economy coming into Reading by hiring local construction people. We've added to the economy by our seniors shopping in the local stores. So we encourage you to check out our website, wearecch.org. and to learn more about the 7 states that we have, the other facilities we have in the 7 states. And I wanted to take an opportunity to also introduce the president and CEO of Christian Church Homes, Cynthia Alvarez. She drove up from the Bay Area tonight just to be able to meet the city council and to show you our presence here. We have an open house on October the 1st, and we'd like to extend an invitation to have you come to the open house and see just exactly what our dollars have done in working with the city of Reading. And my last slide. Do you have any questions at all?
What time is the open house? Is it 9:30 or 10?
It is 10.
10
It's
o'clock.
October 1st, 10
Yep.
to 12.
Okay, I'll be
And
there.
our address is 3294 Piper Way, and we encourage you to come, see what your dollars have done, meet our seniors, and hear some of their stories. They're incredible.
Do you have any more projects in sight?
We're hoping to in Reading, but we have other projects. We're working on projects in Hayward right now, Chico, Tennessee, Sacramento. Yes, but Reading is my pride and joy because I live in Reading. And I was fortunate enough to take the Lorenz. I'm going to tell you a quick, brief story. I won't take up all your time. I walked into the Lorenz, quit a really high-paying job down south, moved up here to Reading because it's so gorgeous. Walked into the Lorenz, they were looking for an assistant community manager. I went to work for $18,000 a year 29 years ago. Fell completely in love with the Lorenz and the city of Reading and said, this is my place. This is where I belong. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with a company that allowed me to expand us here in the city of Reading with 4 sites. I like to do 5 and 6 or whatever. We need low-income housing for seniors. Steve worked on my project at the Hotel Reading as a very young man for the city of Reading. He was the hard hat guy that came around and checked to make sure that we were doing prevailing wages with his clipboard and his hard hat. We have a long history with the city of Reading, and I just wanted to thank the city council for always being there for us and the city of Reading for helping us with the fundings.
Thank you, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, we'll all
No,
be there, though.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, our last presentation of the evening. Ryan Richardson, Executive Director, Superior California Economic Development, providing an annual update on activities. Bye, Camille. Have a good day.
Hello, my name is Ryan Richardson. I'm the Executive Director of Superior California Economic Development. First, before we get into any of the updates, I want to talk about why collaboration matters. What do we do for an economy to be healthy in our area, and this is anywhere? You need people. Obviously, that's our workforce. You need to have a community. That's the housing. That's the placemaking. That's what we were hearing about earlier, all these great things. And we need to have jobs. That's where economic development comes into play as well. So these items, they have to be in balance. If you're out of balance, if you have a lot of jobs and no housing, that creates an issue. If you have a lot of people with good housing, no jobs, that creates an issue as well. So that gets back to why we were created. So knowing that economic challenges don't stop at the city or county lines, the 4 counties, along with Reading, Anderson, and Shasta Lake, created SCED to become an Economic Development Administration Economic Development District in 1979. So we're managed by a 17-member board of directors, and we have a staff of 4. And Steve's one of our boards of directors. He's on the board. Some of the things when I go present at different conferences or different webinars, people don't know where Northern California is. So I usually toss in a couple of pictures, show a lake, show some mountains, so we're not Southern California. One of the really things people don't understand is the scope of how big our area is. So the 4 counties that I covered, it's basically the same size as New Hampshire and Vermont combined with a population of 250,000 people. And most everybody lives along the I-5 corridor. So I tell if you go either east or west, you're going to get very rural very fast. So it's very fun and that's one of the benefits of my job is I get to travel a lot and see a lot of beautiful places. With that backdrop, here are the 4 priorities that guide everything we do at SCED. That's kind of fancy language, so I'm going to keep it a little bit more simple. We make loans to small businesses. That's our most forward-facing thing that we have with the public. We write and update the comprehensive economic development strategy for the region. That's a strategy that the Economic Development Administration has. You need to have that in order to get EDA funds. We find grants to do projects that support the SEDS. So that's a part of my job too, where I'll go out and we have to figure out where can we get different grants, whether it be federal grants, be it from our state partner, will be from private as well. And then we have internal metrics as well. How are we doing as an organization? Can we be sustainable? That's one of the nice things about our nonprofit, our organization, is that we do generate unrestricted funds as well. So it gives us a little more stability than what we see in some of our other agencies. This question comes up a lot. Aren't you the Shasta EDC? Doesn't come up as much now that Todd's not there because, you know, we were both guys. He's much younger, so my hair is much darker, but it used to be, or much grayer. It must be the old days I was a little nicer hair, but that happens. But if you look at the service area, I never get to use a point. Oh, wow, that's cool. What? Oh, now how do I get rid of it? All right, so we're going to leave that there for a while. So on the SCED, for our regional, we're a region, we cover 4 different counties, and then we're also a statewide certified development company, so we can make certain SBA loans throughout all of California. The Shasta EDC, they focus on a local Shasta County. We have different functions. We also have different funding areas. So the International Economic Development Council says there are basically 10 different pillars of economic development. Very few organizations do all 10 of them. It just doesn't work that way because you have to specialize. We do a couple, the Shasta EDC does a couple. We're not in competition, we're collaboration. We do have different areas, we're complementary. What we've done a lot recently, we're starting to really collaborate. And that's one of the things that we've seen in economic development throughout the last couple of years. It's been our trend of collaboration. So we've been able to collaborate on projects that align with our SEDS and the Shasta EDC's expansion and attraction plans. So we're looking at infrastructure projects in South County, as well as the BDO zone application. Of course, none of this work is done alone. Each of our partners fills a role. So again, I toss the logos on there to show how many things we have going on. We're able to work with a bunch of different agencies. So on the planning side, EDA and local jurisdictions help fund that. On the lending side, the Economic Development Administration, the Small Business Administration, the USDA, and private funds help us with make loans or give us funds for loans. And then on grant projects, again, same of the usual suspects, EDA, USDA. We receive state funds through the California Jobs First. We're excited about them getting into economic development. Wells Fargo and US Bank have also been big supporters on our grant side. And then our bank partners, we can't forget them. They're where we get our referrals from for our lending program. 60% of all of our revenue at SCED is from our lending programs. So it's really exciting. I want to make sure they get a shout out and how much we appreciate their work as well. Through the California Reinvestment Act, they also give unrestricted contributions, which for a nonprofit, those help a lot. And Wells Fargo and US Bank, or Wells Fargo is also really good about giving us grants for a purpose, so those restricted grants. So what we actually do. So once again, to review 3 things. So number 1, we put together the comprehensive economic development strategy. That's the main thing that we do with our Economic Development Administration Partnership Planning Grant. We do small business lending. That is huge for us. We're able to help a lot of different businesses. We help with gap financing. So rarely are we making the investment ourselves. We're usually working with a bank where the business owner isn't quite ready to get it totally financed by the bank. We can step in there. We're like Miracle Grow. We help, they're gonna get there eventually. We just help them get there a little bit faster through that lending project. And then the economic development projects, this is something we've really gotten into the last 3 years since I took over the executive director, finding different ways to push the goals that are in our comprehensive economic development strategy. EDA gives us funds to create the strategy, but no money for implementation. So you have to work with your partners, you have to be creative, find different ways to get those projects rolling. So more than just a plan, our CEDS actually delivers results. So again, in order to get EDA funds, you have to have a roadmap there, and that's what the CEDS document does. So here are a couple of projects that were sent for application. Hopefully you recognize both of them. One was for the Stillwater Business Park extension. Steve and Jason did a great job on putting that together. Your City of Reading staff are amazing at doing that work. And then Simpson University as well applied for a project. And that was kind of fun because every time I talk to somebody, they go, do you think EDA funds could do this? And I'm like, I don't know. So we call our EDA rep and he goes, oh, sure, we can do that. I'm like, really? Because I didn't think some of the projects we work on are eligible, but it does work and it's pretty exciting when it does. So long-time planning, one of the most visible ways we make an impact is supporting small business with access to capital. So you can see we've made a lot of loans. I've been with SCED for 20 years, 17 years as the loan program manager, 3 years as executive director. So a lot of those 580 loans made were mine. So I take a lot of pride in what we've been able to do in the area. My poor kids, when they were little, we'd drive around town or we'd be going somewhere and I'm like, hey, that's one of our things. That was a project we did. That was a project we did. I like to say my son's one of the best economic developers. He's in Korea right now in the Air Force. But after listening to me on so many road trips for soccer, he learned a lot about what we're doing. As well, last year, we made $1.9 million in loans. 1.1 million that was in Reading. And with those Reading loans, we leveraged an additional 3.3 million. So that impact is 4.4 million on there. Last year, the city invested $27,000 with us. So that return on investment on just that piece is pretty huge. You toss in what we're looking at for those EDA grants, it's even larger. This year, because EDA changed the grant requirement, it actually went down to 18,000. So it's quite a bit of a savings that the city will be seeing there. And one thing, I'll try this again because it's really cool. We don't create, darn it, did it again. We don't create the jobs, the entrepreneurs create the jobs. So these are all people that have received loans from us. You can see, hopefully maybe a face or two that you recognize. Those are the people that are actually making the impact. So it's fun to see them succeed. And beyond our daily work, we're also launching initiatives that build upon our region's unique strengths. So outdoor recreation was one of the California Jobs First Catalyst Fund grants that we received. We're partnering with Siskiyou EDC on that. So we have a microloan component. Siskiyou EDC is handling an educational component. And this is for our whole district, all 4 counties that we cover. The Modoc Meet, again, that was another California Jobs First. We were able to get money from that. That's a Modoc County specific project, but anything that we do in these other counties really benefits Shasta County and specifically Reading because this is the hub for economic development activity. And so what we look at for that, we're trying to market a processing plant up there. We got a USDA grant a couple of years ago that said, yeah, it's feasible. And now we're trying to find someone to pick that up and to do a processing plant. The BDO zone, that's a Biofuel Development Opportunity Zone. And this was really cool because Rebecca from Shasta EDC came over and said, hey, I want to do this. It fits into our plan with biomass, and I think this is a good opportunity, but we don't have grant capacity because most of the people that get these grants get it through USDA. That's what we do all day long. So we're able to merge or collaborate on this. So I was able to help her. This is a project that we'll be working on in the fall. And then the Wells Fargo projects, we just put the application in for this. And we talk about how we do regional, and this is actually a super regional project because we work with other economic development districts in far northern California. That's the California Finance Consortium. And we're going to do a rural downtown revitalization playbook. So right now, a lot of our rural communities are struggling. They're transitioning from resource extraction to what's next in the economy. We all like to say our areas are beautiful, but so are a lot of other places. What's going to go into these empty buildings? What are going to go into these storefronts? And that's what we're looking for with this. In addition, that grant also covers a collaboration that we're doing with Shasta College on entrepreneurial boot camps. We'll do one in each of the 4 counties. It's replicating a project that they did down in Tehama County that was extremely successful. We're going to bring it up here. And then we have loan readiness technical assistance that will also be funded through that grant. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll get that one approved. Of course, every opportunity comes with challenges, and here are some that we're watching. For us, since we're funded through the Economic Development Administration, we get some USDA funds, the Small Business Administration. Those are all federal programs, and the federal programs have been in flux this year. It's been a challenging environment trying to figure out what's going to be available, what's not. So we're looking forward to the budget coming out and figuring out, okay, this is exactly what we're going to do. As I talked about, rural communities are struggling, trying to figure out what can we do to help them, what's available, what businesses can we get to go in there. That's going to be a challenge that we're going to look at in the next couple of years. But on the opportunity side, the continued collaboration has been nice. I'm the kind of person, it's much easier to do it by yourself. And so now working with different organizations has been really interesting, working on my skill set. But we're starting to see how it pays dividends. So we're not replicating anything, we're enhancing each other, and that's been kind of fun to work on as well. On the lending side, we're going to EDA for more money. We have a 92% utilization rate, which means the $9 million I have in revolving loan funds is out in the community. It doesn't replicate until I get paid back. So we can loan out as much as we have. So that's one of the issues that we're trying to get more money so we can help more entrepreneurs. And then probably most excitingly is the opportunity for our comprehensive economic development strategy update. So it updates every 5 years. We do a full rewrite every 5 years. Annually, we update it. So the next new one will be 2027. So we start writing it next year. Very exciting. It'll be the first one that I'm the executive director on, where we get to put my stamp on it. It's changed. EDA has changed requirements over the last few years. It went from this big old thick document that nobody read. They show them as doorstops on some of our trainings. Now it's a much more interactive document where we're using it. That's one of the goals, is try to make sure everybody knows about it, how we can use it, and how it can bring additional funds into the area. And that's why SCED exists. We're here to help Reading and the region navigate challenges and seize the opportunities on the economic development side. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to read the thing first? Oh, this item, okay. All right, Nick Garner.
I didn't intend to comment on this. I pushed the wrong button.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, moving on. Public comment. The city council will allocate up to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker for 30 minutes total at the beginning of the meeting for public comment for non-agendized matters within the city's jurisdiction. The mayor will determine the order of speakers. If 30 minutes is not adequate to accommodate all of the individuals who have submitted their name through the electronic kiosk, the council will trail this item to the end of the open session agenda. The remaining speakers will address the city council at that time. All right, Steve, you're up. Leslie, you can be next.
Good evening again. Councilwoman Adet, you're a very skilled individual. I believe you have a degree in political science. Don't you or didn't you teach political science at Bethel? But your skills are being used in a horrible way. You are manipulating people with partial information and misinformation in order to capitalize on the feeling that so many people have that government is corrupt, that we pay too much in taxes, that government employees are out for themselves and not out for the people. This is a common belief to start with, but you are harvesting that belief. You are undermining our city government and our city employees, supposedly because you suspect, because you think something's wrong. Not because you have facts that you can throw up here and say, there is corruption. No, it's your feelings. It's what you think might be happening. You've been making implications that employees are hiding things from you or not giving you the information that you want. You've been given the information and you simply don't believe it or ignore it. I don't know for sure why you're doing what you're doing, but I suspect it has to do with you running for some state office. With the videos you've been posting on social media, it's clear you're trying to position yourself for further political ambitions, perhaps State Board of Equalization or something. But what you are doing is not in the best interest of the city of Reading. You even stated with a smirk on your face that after the first of the year, if this sales tax does not pass, many things are going to be hurt drastically. That is true. By undermining this sales tax, you're going to cause many negative impacts to the city of Reading. Without extra money, I believe our civic auditorium will close. The ball field will end up continuing to deteriorate. I doubt the soccer field will be able to continue to stay open for any length of time. Our roads will continue to deteriorate, and they have nothing to do with the allegations you're making. The roads would receive 30% of the tax revenues, and the other monies come from the road tax. The city of Reading is only a pass-through entity when it comes to roads. There is no way the city of Reading can move that spending elsewhere. Yet, by undermining the sales tax, you will guarantee that our roads continue to deteriorate because the state doesn't give us enough money to maintain them properly. Yes, Adet, you are the destroyer of cities. I'll leave it at that. I've got a lot more. I will continue on the next time.
All right, thanks, Steve. Leslie? Lance Law, you're on deck.
I have my shadow with me today. Oh, you want to stand on there? I feel 112% opposite of everything Steve just said. Thank you for standing on principle. Thank you for every time you sat in here and tried to ask a question and Mayor Munn shut you down because he wants this meeting to only last an hour. Or the rest of the council shut you down because they love the fact that they've been managed by this table over here. I am really hoping you are not a continuance of that. So far, we've had positive interactions. I hope that continues. But this council, the previous council, was managed by the city manager, and that is not how this works. So thank you for standing on principle. Thank you again. I've said it before and I will say it again. Thank you for coming forward and apologizing for the times that you were wrong and standing up and taking that. Everything you have done would hurt any political aspiration that you have. Yet you have stuck your head out and your neck out for us because you are doing the right thing and standing on principle. Sorry, you were right. I did not put in for that first comment because I thought if there is nothing nice to say, it's better not to say anything at all. So I only put in for public comment. What I will say is when somebody shows you who they are, believe it. Tanessa sat there, had nothing nice to say, so she didn't say anything at all. Barry, however, gave a very disgusting display of who he is. So thank you for having class. Thank you for having our backs. And thank you for standing up when no one else will.
Lance Law. Then Janet Chapman, you're after him.
Hi, I live in Crown Estates and have Clear Creek is along the back of my property. There's a neighborhood there and there's probably a dozen houses that line the creek. We're on the south side of the creek. On the north side, or excuse me, we're on the north side of the creek. On the south side of the creek, it's pretty common for homeless people to be camped back there. And there's kind of a typical cycle. They get in there, they camp. In the wintertime, the creek floods. It floods out the camp, sort of washes all of the debris from the camps into the creek and eventually into the river. It makes a pretty big mess. It's something we've kind of, in the neighborhood, have been able to handle. Right now, there is, it's gone from camp to compound. These guys aren't afraid to build a cabin, use a chainsaw. When it flooded last spring, I went back there, took a look at it, and they had actually built it up on an elevated platform. They had a wood stove in there. They have solar panels. They have batteries that store the electricity for the solar. They have a mini fridge that floated down the creek and kind of got stuck in a log jam. This spring, before all the trees budded, I could literally see the camp from my dining room. If I were to walk out the back of my gate, walk down the trail, swim across the creek, I could be in the camp in maybe 1 minute. There's constant dog barking, fighting, all the carrying on that kind of goes on with that sort of thing. And there's been something that's been pretty weird. You know, in the wintertime, people like sleep with their windows open, and every now and then I'll wake up and it's just like, my God, what's this toxic plume, you know, and it just smells like something just crazy is on fire. And I've spoke with a few of my neighbors, and it's kind of been sort of a weird ongoing thing that we've all noticed. You know, I've talked to some of my neighbors, yeah, what are they burning trash? What happened when their tents catch on fire? Can't really figure it out. So anyway, you know, in the past, I've gone into the camps before and tried to have conversations with the residents of the camps. So Sunday, I went across the creek, went into the camp. Everybody kind of scattered, except for the pack of dogs. And I started looking around. There's stoves, there's pots and pans, empty solvent jugs. There's a meth lab. And so maybe I've reported it to RPD a bunch of times, but maybe you guys can help us out and direct some more resources to this. Basically, it's a meth lab. All right, thank you.
Where was this property again?
Crown Estates.
Crown Estates subdivision, it's on the south side of Clear Creek, and it's probably a block down from the 273 bridge. They've kind of worked their way through that forest, and you know, RPD's been aware of it. I've actually had conversations with patrolmen. I've reported it to Fish and Wildlife, BLM, Shasta County. You know, it's like everybody kind of has been aware of it. I've been pretty vocal, and it's been an ongoing thing, but typically it's, you know, a handful of camps, the weather chases them out of there, and it takes a while for them to come back. But do you guys remember like what was going on at Norpon before it got developed into a recreation area? There is an astronomical amount of debris in this area now, and
The chief of police is over here, so we're gonna have you talk to him after you're done.
yeah, I've got some pictures.
He would love that.
Well, yeah. And then we'll follow up. Have you emailed or given us any of your contact info?
You know, I've submitted a bunch of stuff to the RPD. You know, the online submission. Yeah, so there's a long record.
Can you just follow, we're gonna follow up with him, but will you also follow up with us either by email or come to the next meeting and we'll make sure that something's been done?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Chapman, you're up next. Nick Garner, you're on deck.
Greetings, council members. I'm Reverend Janet Chapman from First Christian Church, and we are deeply humbled. We just celebrated our 60th anniversary here in Reading, and we are grateful that you were able to hear about Christian Church Homes. We have been in partnership with them in the 60 years we've been here in Reading, and it's wonderful to see their success, not just here in Reading, but nationwide in housing low-income seniors in beautiful sustainable apartments. You should go check out these apartments. They're gorgeous. But that didn't start off that way 69 years ago. It took time for Christian Church Homes to build up, to adapt, to revise, to adjust, to navigate grant options, to consider housing and how to finance those housing options. It wasn't an overnight process. And so I'm sharing from, and so grateful Cynthia from the Bay Area could come and be with us. I'm sharing from the way back when we were just learning how to do this. And I would like to remind you that that also applies to situations like creating microshelters. We are a big advocate for the microshelters here in Reading. It is not an overnight process. Whereas we have been working with the microshelter for a couple years in South Market, the one the United Way has been undergirding, they now have 30 people who are out working in the community, in their own apartments, their own housing, and they are employed. I also want to acknowledge this would not have happened without the support of Barry Tippin and Steve Bade and Kristen Schrader. And we are deeply grateful for that support. But this is not an overnight process. This takes time and patience. And I know it's hard to be patient. And I know when you're looking at the bottom line, you want to see, well, I want to get these people out. Let's get them out right away. If we had done that 69 years ago in Christian Church Homes, I guarantee to you the Lorenz, Hotel Reading, Treehouse, and Piper Way would be vacant. They would not exist. Caring for the vulnerable takes time. It takes effort. And if Christian Church Homes had given up and City of Reading had said, you're not operating fast enough, then the 230 people who have homes right now with CCH would not be so lucky. Please, friends, consider the process and recognize this is not an overnight. It's not even a 1-year process or a 2-year process. This involves all of us working together on the long haul. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, you're up, then Todd Jones.
I've got a radio show, Poke the Hornet's Nest. It's on KCNR1460.com. I would encourage everybody to go to the show this last Sunday. We had Christine and Mike Robinson on. They own a property at the middle of Middle Creek Road, and they were burned out with the car fire. And the city of Reading, in conjunction and mostly with the Shasta County Code Enforcement, have done everything to steal their property from them. They put every roadblock up they could possibly put up to where they can't rebuild, and they've spent a ton of money, I mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, defending themselves. And at the end of the day, they got a hold of a map that showed that the city of Reading wanted to put a trailhead with a 15-car parking lot on their property. And that was what the big push was. And this is something Barry Tippin should have been aware of. If he wasn't, this is a travesty of justice trying to steal these people's property the way they did. So I would encourage everybody to go listen to that. KCNR1460.com, and listen to how the government can steal your property, how things are manipulated. Now, Mark Mazzano said that all the decisions were made by the supervisors up there. And like Leslie said, they make their decisions with the information Barry gets them. But I'd like to ask Mark, did you vote on letting our sports park go to hell? Did you vote on letting all the parolees from out of the area be paroled to Reading? I've got information that can back that up. And, You know, our town's gone to hell. I don't know where you guys get the rosy picture that everything's hunky-dory because I don't see it.
All right. Todd Jones, you're up.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Thank you for having me here today. I wanted to kind of touch on a few things. I think the first one really that kind of encompasses all of it is collaboration. I just want to thank the staff of the city of Reading for partnering with us and collaborating with us for Visit Reading and supporting the work that we do at Visit Reading to really, like Danny said, highlight and be that bright light and showcase what Reading has to offer. And I think we've seen that over the last several years and the TOT increase that we've seen since the chamber has taken on that. And it's been great to work with Travis and Steve and that whole team there. But the big thing that I wanted to talk about is really Barry tonight. And I know I didn't know you could actually present on those presentations at the beginning, but I really wanted to thank Barry. Between my time at the EDC and now at the chamber, when I was at the EDC, we were in dozens and dozens of meetings on different projects. Some of them were a little bit crazy, so thank you for humoring me with some of these people that came to town. But I think my big takeaway from every single meeting I've ever had with Barry on these ideas at Stillwater or other big investments in Reading is he always found a way and he always had a positive attitude and he said, we'll figure it out, we'll get it done. And I think everybody that came into those meetings that walked away always felt, I know for a fact, they always felt confident that the city of Reading could do it, take care of them, and see the project through to fruition. And a lot of that came from Barry's leadership at City Hall over the last several years. And I really want to thank you for all of the work that you've done and the visionary leadership and the way that you've been able to stand up and do what you think needs to be done to see progress happen in our city. So thank you so much, and we're going to miss you. Appreciate it, Barry.
Thanks, Todd. All right. Moving on to consent calendar. The consent calendar contains items continued routine and/or which have been individually scrutinized by city council members and are anticipated to require no further deliberation. If a member of the public wishes to address the item on a consent calendar, please enter your name in the electronic kiosk in the lobby before the consent calendar is considered. Yes? It shall be the prerogative of any city council member before the consent calendar is acted upon to 1, comment on an item, 2, respond to any public comment on an item, 3, request the record reflect an abstention or a nay vote on an item. And number 4, remove an item and place it on the regular portion of the agenda for delivery of a staff report and/or extended discussion deliberation. Do we have any of those today? All right, entertain a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to approve consent.
All right, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, well, hallelujah. That was nice. All right, moving on. 9.10, Mr. Robinette, consider the City of Reading's year-end budget review, associated resolution for fiscal year ending 2025. It's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Mr. Orloff said something that I think kind of spoke to me. It's an honor to be up here presenting this information and working hard for our community. I know I don't say it enough, and so I just wanted to express that I really take great pride in the work that we do in our department. And with that, I'll get started. This update, I think this is the 4th time I've given it, can always be a little challenging because we just adopted a new budget, a new 10-year plan, but yet here we are talking about the old 10-year plan one last time. And so that in and of itself can be a little confusing. I'll do my best throughout the presentation to connect those pieces where appropriate from kind of how the new 10-year plan was created with the information present in this document. The primary 2 connection points, just to point out off the start, is the beginning cash number for the new 10-year plan has some loose relationship, not a direct correlation, to the ending cash of the old 10-year plan as of June 30, 25 will be our beginning cash for July 1st, 25. And then the other part where there's a loose connection is with our revenue forecasts. We have to actually, when we're doing the budget, it's early spring, and we are having to forecast the rest of 24-25. So I will do my best to explain the revenue projections we use as part of the budget for 24-25 and try to contextualize where we landed relative to not just the old budget, but the new budget as well as we kind of launch off into this new budget that we're already 2.5 months into. Okay, is our check here, Steve? Okay. So starting with the first slide here, this is a kind of our general fund cash balance, provides a history of each quarter ending actual cash reserves. The beginning cash, June 30, 24, is the cash used in our general fund 10-year plan. As council may remember, the cash actually in our audited general fund financial statements was much higher than that. We lower it for various encumbrances and carryovers that are carried over to the next year. In this fiscal year, that was quite large. With between encumbrances and carryovers, we had about a $10 million reduction to cash from the audited cash to the beginning cash that was used by the 10-year plan. This V pattern of cash is pretty normal. And then the actual cash for June 30, 25 is about 10.2 million right now. I also like to point out as part of this presentation, we are not done with our audit. We're about 4 to 6 weeks away from the completion of our audit, so there still will be adjustments incoming on cash and various expenses. It shouldn't be a lot at this point, but I do think it's an important context to know we are not done with our audit, so these numbers are subject to change. The current 10-year plan, or I call it the old 10-year plan at this point, would project that we would have about a 6% reserve, $6.8 million. The new 10-year plan is that we actually forecasted a $9 million number. I went through some detail in the staff report to explain kind of the difference between those two numbers and why I still believe the 9 million is a good estimation. And over the next couple slides, I'll get into those details of the revenues. Yes, they were short. There's some context around those revenues, and expenses. There was a great deal of savings in the general fund that we can count as savings towards the beginning cash. So this first slide is just a high-level overview. Revenues are on the left. Typically, in a perfect world, you would want actuals to be above, so the dark blue to be above the light blue. Just that way you know you're increasing your revenue over what you forecasted. In this case, we're $3.7 million under projections. The next couple slides, I'll break down what those details are. And then on the right set of graphs there, you always want actual to be below budget. And while we do have some budget requests included in the staff report, that's kind of the second half of the presentation, that is primarily not a result of lack of savings, as you'll see in a few slides, but savings in the right categories for those departments. So overall, they saved money, but in the specific categories that we manage the budget to, they needed some additional funds. Not a lot, but some additional funds. So first, this is our kind of our revenue chart for the audience's benefit. Although council has heard me present this a few times, I still think it can be slightly confusing. If every bar was exactly on that line, you didn't see a bar, that means we hit the projection exactly. That's pretty hard to do, so I don't think I hardly ever see anything. You know, some of those are very close to the line, which is encouraging. As you can see here, sales tax for 24-25 was $1.3 million under projection for 24-25. In a few slides, I'll talk about when we built the new budget, what did we assume for 24-25? I can kind of forecast it was lower than the number that we had in the budget that was previously approved by council. Property tax was over by $500,000. Transient occupancy tax below projection by $300,000. Cannabis tax and other taxes, combine those together, about $300,000 below. Building-related fees, about $238,000 below. Internal departments, we haven't finished what's called the street report or the gas tax true-up, but that's the primary difference between the internal departments transfer is due to the streets still working on finishing some projects. We don't make a transfer to the general fund until that money is spent. And so there were some projects that are kind of lagging behind that we expect over the next year we'll be able to transfer that money from the streets department to the general, or from the gas tax funds to the general fund. Another big item on this slide that I wanted to point out is the revenue from other governments. The fire department has been working pretty hard with the federal government, FEMA, to bill our SAFER grant. We're owed about $2.2 million through the end of the fiscal year, and that would mostly make up for the reduction there. The reason there's an issue, it's a little nuanced, but the federal government has told us to start switching over to a singular UEI number. It's basically a grant number that we're allowed to have. They no longer want us to have multiples. Our city did have multiples for a long time. So there was a UEI number used on the application that now, since then, we've got rid of that UEI number. We've consolidated in the singular city UEI number. And so we're having some issues in their system that we have to bill through, actually getting that UEI number updated. Just saw another email from FEMA, it's called FEMA Go, where it's tier 3, which I guess is their highest level of support, and we're trying to get that issue rectified so we can bill them for our incurred costs. But that's just a good example where we're going to receive that money in the next 3 to 6 months, most likely, and then we'll have a revenue next year that we weren't counting for that would actually bring this graph up more to equal. This is a history of tax revenues. As you can see, sales tax over the past 3 years has been mostly flat. Property tax continues to grow year over year. I'll get the next slides. We'll actually get into some details of historical growth and the growth we've seen over the past few years. But this just kind of gives a snapshot of the last 3 years, and this is actually through June. So property tax continues to be a strength, but all the other revenues are mostly flat. The tax revenues are mostly flat. So I felt like it would be good to talk about more than 3 years of actuals, talk about where our forecast exists in the new budget, and also walk through kind of the previously 23-25 adopted budget and amended budget. So first up is sales tax. As you can see on the graph, we had basically 10 years of, if you average it all out, it's growth, but over the past 5 years, it has pretty much been flat. 4 years, it's been flat. So if you average 10 years, sales tax has increased by 3.4% over those 10 years on average. And then from 2015 to 2020, it was 3.2%. All told, I think what's important is what did we do in the budget? So with the adopted budget is the darker blue line. In September of last year, we amended the budget down to the green line. And as you can see, for last year, the revenue continued to kind of stay flat. And we built the new budget, assuming 24-25 was going to be flat from 23-24. It did slightly come in below that by about $500,000. So we're already starting off kind of on a bad foot. And then we assumed 2% growth for the first 2 years of the budget and then 2.5% thereafter. I think with the historical information of 3.4% growth for 10 years, I think our assumptions are pretty conservative. But also, to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a situation where besides that little bubble, mostly if you look across those 4 years, we're flat. There's a bubble there and then we've been flat for 4 years besides that bubble. So that's our forecast for the new budget, and it is below the even amended budget or the last adopted budget. And we're kind of chasing it down as it continues to go flat. We assume it's going to increase at some point, and I'm hopeful that at some point it'll catch up and start meeting or beating our assumptions. A little added context here. I think I started presenting these updates as a finance officer in around 2019, and from 2019 to 2022, I would always come to council and tell them how good sales tax is doing. It's always beating our projections. And then in 2023 was when I felt like I was Eeyore all the time because it continually, we're trying to find the bottom, so to speak, with assumptions that assume growth. And so I would always come in and say, yeah, sales tax isn't meeting our expectations or meeting our forecast. So I remain hopeful that this year will be the year, but it is a key component of our budget that we're going to have to watch. The next one up is property tax. Again, for kind of context, again, the dark blue is our original adopted budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. We amended it last September to the green bar, and then we have the purple bar, which is the new budget. Those are pretty close to each other. So for historical context, our average revenue increases for the last 10 years in this category was 6.24%. And if you look over the past 5 years, it was 6.89%. And in the budget, we assumed a 4.5% increase from 23-24 to 24-25. And then thereafter, we assumed a 3% increase. So pretty conservative revenue assumption if you base it off the last 10 years of actual performance, which could continue to be an area where it helps offset maybe some of the negative performance with sales tax. And I will say, as a finance guy, I am happy to see that our property tax is nearly catching up to our sales tax. Unfortunately, it's bad circumstances, but in a perfect world, that's a good thing because this is a lot more stable revenue than sales tax. And you can kind of count on it maintaining, even if things start to go bad. It takes a couple years for you to start to see some of those bad outcomes in the property tax. Next up is TOT. This is a lot smaller revenue than the previous two. And as you can see there, there's some volatility that is introduced in this revenue potentially with those major spikes. I'll just context each of the spikes and what I think contributed to them. In 2019 area there, we had the car fire and we had the camp fire in Paradise. That brought a lot of fire crews to our area, staying in our hotels. Terrible tragedy, but in terms of our TOT, it did help quite a bit. And then in 2022, I always tell people, I think at some point people figured out, oh, up in Northern California, they're not shut down. Let's go vacation up there. And so I think they came to our community at that time. So I think we're starting to see this revenue kind of normalize again. You see the blue line was the adopted budget, previous budget. We amended it last September to the green line, and then the adopted budget for 25-27 is right there. And the assumptions we used were flat from 23-24 to 24-25. That pretty much came true. And then 4% thereafter. This revenue has averaged over the past 10 years a 6.55% increase. And then the past 5 years, it's actually averaged a 7.43% increase. But for 2025, it was off 0.28%, lower than the previous year. So with a lot of hot air spent on revenue, I will now kind of transition to budget. This was the previously kind of alluded to savings that we've experienced in the general fund in each of our major budgets. As you can see there, almost all of the budgets have savings. Some of those will have carryovers. I did look, we have about $1.5 million of unspent ARPA money that will be carried over for next year. Most of that is in the police department for the Park Rangers program. In the public works, most of that savings is actually going to be carried over because it's streets money. Streets doesn't necessarily impact the general fund negatively when we carry the money over because they have a funding source that's available, and Michael will get into that during his presentation, I believe, to talk about where their funds are and how they plan to spend them over the coming years, including carryovers. But all told, this is very good news for the general fund. I think this is emblematic of the calls to all of our departments to save money. And this is, a lot of these are real savings that we can count on, which is part of why we will have balance right around $9 million instead of the old 10-year plan forecasted $6.8 million. So I also wanted to talk again in context of the new 10-year plan and relative to the old 10-year plan. So the light blue is the adopted FY24 and 25 10-year plan expenditures. And then the dark blue is the amendment that is in there right now, basically the up-to-date amendment. And then the green is actually what the new 10-year plan looks like. And so, we've talked about a lot of cuts in that 10-year plan. In FY26, which is the first year of the new adopted 10-year plan, there's about $6.8 million of cuts, and then roughly about $4 or $5 million thereafter. And as council knows, and I mentioned it in the staff report, we have a full breakdown with our adopted budget, and there was actually some revenue increases as well, where we're going to charge more for our recreation fees and our development services fees, which will help offset, not costs, but offset the costs that we're incurring, and we used to subsidize those programs to a greater degree. We'll now subsidize them to a lesser degree through increased fees. And then I wanted to present the actual 10-year plans in relationship to each other, because I think this is important. So the light blue line was our adopted 23-25 ending cash percentage. As council knows, we have a 10% required reserve. And then the blue was actually our amended 23-25 cash. And if we continued on that trajectory, we would have been bankrupt effectively. But through the course of the budget, we've made some cuts. Not to say we're not going to have to monitor the progress of our budget. I continue to emphasize that to council. It's going to be very important to watch how our revenues are coming in, how our expenses coming in relative to the forecasts. Our departments have a lot of work in front of them to meet their operational needs with significant cuts to their budgets. So to kind of conclude the presentation, city budget requests, starting with the general fund, police is requesting $631,000 for retirement cash outs. And then fires has a $773,000 request for retirements and negotiated increases. Engineering, this one's a little unique. It has about a $285,000 request Basically, the budget was built with a higher overhead rate than we were allowed to use due to the Caltrans calculation. So basically a little bit of offset there that we didn't get to incur the advantage of. But I will say, if you follow that overhead rate over a long enough period of time, the goal of the Caltrans calculation is effectively to make it zero. But we've had years where we've actually kind of made money off the overhead rate. That was the late teens, early 20s, and then now it's kind of flipping back the other way as it kind of works to normalize itself over a long period of time. And then $437,000 for engineering and land development. Those have associated revenues that you will see in the budget resolution. And then parking, we have a loan to parking at this time for $232,000. Effectively, our belief is parking will be able to pay this back in the long term as we hopefully see more usage of the parking downtown, so increased revenues. And also, we will see they have a loan to for the actual system, the parking pay stations, that will be paid off in the next couple of years. And so we're hoping as those things come together, and they also can start to move away from some of their paid leases on parking areas. And so we're hoping the revenue cuts and the revenue increases and the expenditure cuts will kind of work towards them being in a cash positive situation. They can pay this loan back in the future. Moving on, the enterprise funds, the airport has a variety of requests there, the largest of which is increases for utilities that were not budgeted for with the original budget. Reading Electric Utility has about $4.7 million, the largest of which is personnel increases due to negotiations that occurred in 2023. I will say, talking with their financial team, they have built these into their financial plans. So this number is actually lower than the amounts that they had built into their financial plans. They had built in about $6 million, and this came in at 4.3. And then solid waste has $30,000 for utility increases. It's very small up there, so I apologize. We have some internal service fund requests. These all have adequate cash reserves to pay for these requests. GIS has about $40,000 due to personnel costs increasing due to negotiations. ET has retirement cash outs for $44,000 and about $22,000 for various O&M costs. Fleet has $12,000 due to overtime, and then that large adjustment for vehicle repairs and maintenance, which is mostly due to inventory timing adjustments. So it's not actual cash. Instead, it's a recognition of when do you recognize that expense due to how much inventory do you have on the shelf versus the expenditures that you paid that year. So there's no need for an actual cash increase to their department. And then as previously mentioned, parking is receiving a loan from the general fund for $232,000. And with that, I wish I brought my water in, but I am available for any questions.
Hi. So I'll start with the new reports. So we'll go over expenses and revenue, which you have in the staff report, but I'll go over it through the new reports that you have. So I think the most glaring issue I have with these new reports is that they don't actually have a column for our budget. So
The budget is on the very left of the expenditure reports.
the year-to-date projection?
Yeah, that's
Is
the
that what
budget.
you're calling?
Yeah,
So
that's
we
the
have amended and adopted budgets, and that's neither of those. So our amended budget was 113 million for the expenditures, and that's not included at all. So you have this year-to-date projection that has encumbrances and whatever it's including. 130 is not the budget we adopted or amended.
So
So that
this
must
would
be
include
carryovers.
carryovers and encumbrances.
Right, so there's no column in here for the actual amended or adopted budget.
The column is only the amended budget. Are you saying you would like to see a column that includes carryovers as a separate column?
Yeah, so in our previous reports, there's always a separate column.
Yeah, is it-
Like,
so just
because
the,
you'd have to know what the actual budget was. So we passed a budget. The budget for this year is 113 million. It's not reflected anywhere. So this 130 million is not the budget that we actually passed. So that includes carryovers that I know I was not aware of what those carryovers were, had been asking about what those carryovers are. There's
So-
another report that says there's 6 million, but this looks like there's 17.6 million in carryovers.
yeah, so the numbers would include carryovers, any amendments to the budget that have been performed over the past 2 years. So it's not just inclusive of carryovers, and the previous reports didn't have the adopted budget. It would be amended budget
Amended,
plus
right.
carryovers and encumbrances.
Correct.
So amended budget's always a hard number to get to, because there's, you would have to go through all the staff reports that have gone to council for the 2 years to calculate that number. But this number does include those items. It's not that it doesn't include it, it's just that it's in one number now. And some of that is because the system is drastically different. We used to, the way carryovers were done, there was a separate line in our budget for it. That no longer exists. It's just different systems, so different reports. So it would be a great deal of manual effort, to be frank, to calculate the amendments. I can certainly give you a number, but it's not going to be, it's going to look different than I think you're expecting it to look. I could give you just a column that has budget amendments, but that would be all budget amendments, including carryovers, including the amendments that happen from council. So I could certainly give that to council, but I can't give it the same way that it's always been presented.
So we have a budget that we passed. So this is Q4. So this is the wrapping up. It's the accounting. It should be the end of the fiscal year. So we have had 3 months to reconcile whatever outstanding things are coming. I've been looking
We
at
haven't had 3
Q4s
months.
for a very long time.
So I have to have this staff report done about 2 weeks ago. So, never has it been the final numbers. We actually, in the past, in AS 400 land, we would do 4 closes. The first close was done in late July, and then we would do 3 more subsequent closes. The reports that came to council were the first close. So I just want to make it clear that this has never been the same numbers that would be in the audit. And so that hasn't changed.
Sure, they're not the same numbers that are in the audit. I know that for sure. But the issue for us is we have a budget that we pass, and we have to track that budget. And so when I'm looking at my Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, I want to see how we're tracking according to the budget. And you don't include the budget here. So you would think if I'm a constituent that the budget is $130 million. But I know I didn't approve of $130 million of spending. And when you call it savings, I know because last year I heard the word savings and thought that meant I was below my budget, but I wasn't because that included the carryovers.
When you say below your budget, you were not below your adopted budget, is what you're saying.
Adopted or amended, because the amended does not include carryovers. The carryovers are the carryovers, which I've had an issue with of understanding exactly, can you let us know what the carryovers are? So this report that you have, that it's 6 million, can you tell me why that says 6 million when this budget says that it's a 17.6 million in carryovers?
It's not saying it's 17.6 million. I'm not prepared to give you the exact reconciliation between the adopted budget, the amended budget, and the carryovers. I certainly can provide that to you, and I'll work on it tomorrow, and I'll give it to you off agenda tomorrow. But I think there's a little bit of hazying of the waters right now between what is authorized from council. So I just want to be clear, carryovers are an authorized mechanism of council through a council policy 409. So those are not, I don't want to call them discretionary, but they're discretionary to some degree. Oftentimes they are things that we just have to finish, using ARPA as an example. That's the biggest contributor to our carryovers.
Which is a grant. Are carryovers,
Yeah.
are carryovers usually grants?
In the general fund, typically carryovers are grants.
And are they typically capital, for capital? They're not typically for personnel?
Yeah, typically they are for, well, let me rephrase that, just because I think there's been some confusion over the
I'm not trying to
difference.
get you. I'm legitimately trying to understand this new report, if it's really gonna work, because I still don't have a budget. So like, in Q1, if we got this, it would not show the budget that we just passed of 100 and whatever it is, $108 million of our budget. It would show a different number, but it would only show a fraction of it. So I'm not gonna know till Q4 that the budget is way higher because I don't know what the carryovers are.
Certainly. So the request I hear right now,
Yeah.
and I guess I'm kind of looking at every council member, is to have a column that's adopted budget and then one that,
Or amended.
yeah, this
And
is
then you-
amended with carryovers.
So I know, because I've looked at every single amendment that I could find and did this tedious work that you're talking about, that I did not vote for this level of carryovers. So what the best that I can assess is that years and years ago, there was spending that was made and it just keeps carrying over and we're still going. So I know I didn't approve it. And I don't even know what it is because this is the first time at least I've gotten this, but even still, I don't know the adjustment from what I voted for what was a carryover,
Yeah.
and so what the budget is that we're talking about. So when you
Understood.
say on here that we have 12 million of savings, I'm like, well, how much of that is actually discretionary and how much of that is actually just like a grant? Because if you're asking me for money for police, well, they have got $900,000 in savings.
Yeah.
Use that. I'm not gonna approve a budget.
Yes, certainly a fair question. There's so many points I could answer off of that, but one thing I wanted to say is, I kind of alluded to it, but when we ask for budget, it's because they're over budget in certain categories, and we're taking into account, use ARPA in the case of PD, right? And this will get into one of your questions, is that typically capital or is it personnel? And so what we usually do with grants is we put them in like a special tracking account that historically speaking, when you adopted the budget, it would say capital. And to be honest with you, it was not right all the time because it would include, I call them these specialty accounts that aren't really capital. They're never going to be capitalized, but it was a tracking mechanism that our team would use. We still have those accounts. That's the accounts ARPA lives in. So it could be a hybrid of personnel costs, but it was kind of, I call it specialty tracking accounts for the purposes of tracking some type of specific project. Use ARPA as a great example where we need to report that out to the federal government. So we need a quick place to go capture the expense and review the expense. You also asked a question about the kind of why are we asking for money if they have net savings?
No, what I'm saying is, so I would like to know, we are passing an we're passing an adopted budget. By Q2, you're gonna amend that. That happens every year.
100%.
We're gonna amend it by Q2. Then it's an amended budget.
Yep.
I have asked in the 10-year plan that you start showing those adjustments again, because you can't tell where things have changed. And if it's changed, it's not readily obvious to you. You have to go back and find the rest of your paper. Anyways, so that's not included. This also does not include the adjustments because these carryovers are an adjustment or it's a previously.
It includes it in the number, right? So the
That
number you're
doesn't
saying,
actually
but
help
it
me to
doesn't help you
understand.
delineate.
And it doesn't help me to delineate if I'm actually under budget. Because like you said, if I'm under budget for police, which is what you're saying to me, but I'm actually not, because that money is designated, it's encumbered funds for something specific.
Yeah,
and so that creates a lot of muddiness in the water to understand what are we talking about when you say we're under budget. We're not actually under budget in a way that we actually have discretionary funds to cover it.
Yeah, we're under budget in the sense of council has given staff an adopted budget. We've made amendments, and there are certain tools. As we're talking, I'm thinking about rolling stock is another example of a tool that is discretionary to staff that council has given us to be able to move money from our rolling stock into our budget without council approval. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, rolling stock and equipment replacement, they can be pretty large, right? So there's another area where staff is amending budget that we've been given the authority through council policy to make those amendments. Carryovers is much the same. So again, I hear what you're asking for, and because I'm not prepared to answer that exact question, I would like to give it to you and see if what I'm able to generate is what you're looking for or not.
Yes, and I think for the next report, getting as close to how we are able to look at what actually we're tracking. So if we're tracking the budget really tight, and this is including carryovers, we're not tracking it tight at all. We're actually not even sure what that budget is. Because why exactly are we amending or adopting a budget if you've already decided it's going to include 13 million or 17 million? So like, what are the carryovers? Because we're gonna get a budget, we're gonna get Q1 in November, and what's it gonna show up as? Are you gonna add?
The carryovers this time are gonna be a lot smaller because we've spent most of that ARPA funding. We don't have a lot of grants outstanding, so the carryovers are gonna be a lot smaller.
Do you know what they are?
I don't know right now because we're working on generating the list for Barry's approval with staff. I do know how much we have in encumbrances, and I usually talk about this. Streets is part of the general fund, but I remove streets because they have a funding source that's actually gonna come in to offset their carryovers. I think we have about $1 million in encumbrances. I'm actually going through the list to see if there's anything in there that can be released or we don't need anymore. So there's about $1 million there, and then I believe the carryovers will be somewhere around 1.5 million to 2 million, no more than that. So between those two, you would have about $3 million at most. I will also add, I think this is an important comment, is when we look at the 10-year plan, right, it's never matched the amended budget that's in this, the total amended budget that's in these reports ever. But just one point of clarification, sorry, and then I'll let you ask your question. What we do and what we've always done is we say, hey, here's my audited cash number from the auditors. In the case of last year, it was 23 million. I knew we had encumbrances. I want to say it was 3 million-ish, and then we had these carryovers of 6. So I actually lowered our cash by those encumbrances in the general fund 10-year plan. So I didn't use 23 million, which was the number that you would have taken off the ACFR. I used a lower number because I actually go in and say, okay, I'm not going to go amend my 10-year plan, my financial planning tool by this. I'm instead going to lower my cash because it's spoken for, so to speak, right, through the encumbrances. So I do want to put some context around that to help better understand some of those moving
Not
parts.
only do I understand that, I'm counting on that, because obviously if the money is spoken for, it is not our actual reserve discretionary funding, which is what our cash reserves are. So those are different things. So I don't want them muddied in, all mixed in together. There has to be some delineation. So if you're going to, like, I would like to go back to how it used to be reported before 23-24. Like, previous to that, all of the reports that we had going back to 2017, 2016, like the way that these reports were being given to us in multiple different explanations because of that reason, because a budget that I passed that it's 108 million of expenditures, but you have typically carryovers were like 3 million, 2 million, 5 million. But then after 2022, we're up to 30 million.
And that was mostly because of ARPA.
Right, and that was just quite large, but being not here, I didn't know that. So when you're reporting to us that we're below budget, we're not actually below our actual budget, our 10-year budget. We're below this large, huge carryover budget. So what I hear you saying is we don't have those carryovers because ARPA money is going to be gone now. And so we're going to get back to
A more normal 2 to 3 million.
2 to 3 million of carryovers are not going to be such a huge factor. But I do think, again, for transparency purposes, and so that we actually know apples to apples that we're comparing, having the amended or the adopted budget has to be included in the expenditures.
Certainly. I want to take a stab at it with what would be, I'm going to say, easy from Oracle and see if that meets your needs. And then we can have a discussion around what Oracle doesn't give me that I used to get out of the AS400 very easily. And so let me try it first and see if you're happy with what I'm able to generate or if it just creates more questions. But I would look at this process as semi-iterative, right? So, hey, here's the reports that as I thought that they would be useful for council. Does council want to see something different? I certainly hear your request. It makes sense to me. I think I'll be able to give you something. It might not be exactly what you're after.
Well, the previous staff reports in the staff report would talk about basically the budgeted items. It would tell you that you made, like what is considered in the revenue, not including the transfers. You made, 98 million or 99 million. It would give you that information that would look like what it's going to look like on the 10-year. But then when you got into the budget explanations and you got into the reports, that's talking about everything. So you saw the budget line, but you also saw the encumbrances, you saw the carryovers, you saw previously approved monies, which are typically grants, all of that. So as long as it's all being presented to us, we can parse out which is which, but when those numbers are not included, which they're not included in here, it's very hard to distinguish which is which, because I know I didn't approve on a $130 million budget. I know they didn't, and they were here for half that time. They didn't approve those either, so clearly those came from something else. So this 12 million that's left, that's not gonna continue forward?
Only a small piece of it will continue forward. As I said, my guess right now is about $3 million of it.
So the rest just goes away?
Well, that's not entirely true. And you also have streets in there that has their carryovers, so.
Which you didn't include, but so if you include streets, we're up to
They'll
another
have,
10 or 11
probably
again?
10 or 11, yeah.
So we're up to
with
10,
streets.
so it's about that 12 million is what is going to be the carryover.
I don't expect it to be that large, but it could be that large. But we also have revenues that obviously are coming in next year that we weren't accounting for. Without having done that work, I don't want to give an exact number because we're still in the process of, I literally think my team right now this week is closing all the grants out, making sure all the expenses that are in the grant accounts are accurately accounted for, and our capital accounts and all of these things that we have to do for year end. As they finish that, it really tells us how much money is available from a budgetary standpoint for potential carryovers. And so I would like to finish that process before I try to commit to a number.
Okay, the reason I bring that up is because you put it on the slide as savings.
Understood. So it's savings that could be carried over at the approval of the city manager, but at this point, it is truly savings. right? So there's a potential that it gets carried over if there's projects that warrant it. But at this point right now, it's not encumbered. So the slide.
The streets money's not encumbered.
The streets money is unencumbered at this point. It might be allocated to a project, but they haven't issued a contract
But
yet.
it's for streets.
It's for streets.
It's for streets. So our general fund doesn't have $12 million of savings.
No, and if you read my breakdown, I'm not suggesting that the difference is $12 million. I actually kind of break it down to, maybe we have $4 or $5 million of real savings when you net off the, I'd have to give you a full breakdown. I have it written down somewhere in here. When you net off the carryovers, I think we're looking at like $1, maybe $2 million of savings that are true savings. And then we have revenues that would be below, but then we also have revenues that we know are coming in future years.
But future year revenue wouldn't be talking about the closing end of last year's budget.
But it's talking about what we can expect in terms of cash
For next year?
for next year.
Right, but we're talking about closing it out. So cash has to be already done by June 30th. So we're not talking,
Yeah, but as I said, we adjust
report.
cash for a variety of factors, right? Namely,
Well, beginning cash should be what's based on what we have for cash now.
it is based on that. Yes.
Right, so it wouldn't be affected by revenue that comes in later that we can use in next year's budget.
Well, you're in the future. Use
So
the
that
two
would be end cash.
We're gonna see revenues next year that we can count on for $2.3 million as an example for SAFER. That 2.2, sorry.
But you expended that this year,
We
correct?
expended it this year. We'll
And
get
you're gonna let it go and then use it in the next? Or
we
you're
will
gonna-
receive the revenue in the next year.
Okay.
So meaning we won't budget for that revenue, but we're gonna get it, right?
You're gonna
So
reimburse yourself?
we're gonna get reimbursed by the federal government.
Okay. So let's talk about the general fund reserves.
Can I ask a clarifying,
Talk for a minute, and then we'll
can
come
I
back
ask
to
a
you.
clarifying question just?
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you requesting, just so that I am clear on what it was that you were asking? Because we have amended budget actuals over or under in the percentage. You're
no
also
page
asking
numbers.
for one more,
So on the expenditures? On the
actual
expenditure-
revenue compared to cash flow estimates year to date.
Yeah, so the two expenditure
Mm-hmm.
ones don't include the actual budget.
I'm just asking, are you wanting one more line that essentially
line.
is sort of like a red line, although you wouldn't use red in finance, but
No, the first line should be your actual budget. So it's a budget document. So we're talking about the budget that we passed. So the first line would be your adopted or your amended budget.
It's our amended.
yeah, it's your amended. I am
for this
asking,
one,
the
yeah.
thing you were asking Mr. Robinette for is that you would like another column that gives you what it was that we approved and then an amended so that you can compare the two,
Well,
the
for
two of
this-
those. Is
so-
that what you were asking him to do?
I understand the confusion because I was talking about this, but then also what we're gonna get in November. So that's probably why I'm using
Yeah.
two different words.
Can I
So
add
for
a little
this
bit of
one,
context?
It would be it would be the amended budget. And the amended budget is not 130 million. The amended budget would be what's on the 10-year. And then you would have
Yeah.
whatever the previous ones. On the next one, November 1, which is the Q1, that's gonna be our adopted budget.
Yeah, I
Well,
understand.
yeah.
Does that clarify it?
Sure,
All right,
Oh,
Greg.
no?
You want to add something, Greg? Go ahead.
it's fine.
I just wanted to say some of these reports will look slightly different when it's not the year end, and they all look very similar because some of the reports do cash flow versus actual, and then some bring in, the total budget. And so that I'm trying to replicate as best I can. It's going to be impossible to replicate what we used to have. And that's the one thing I just want to make clear. I'll do my best, but just the tool is different, so I can't get the information out of it the exact same. And frankly, this is part of why currently I'm doing it with data extracts and presenting the information so that we can come to a general consensus of what this council wants to see from these reports, what's useful to them relative to what we're actually able to even provide with relative ease.
Does that, yeah? So for this one, obviously, if you could, but that would actually have to, then these would be the carryover. You have to put the carryovers in there. And now for this one is different because usually you have the month in there. That this doesn't include the actual month.
So
of
that's a
cash
question
flow.
I actually had for council.
Yeah.
We used to include month because these reports, many, many, many years ago, used to come to council monthly.
Yeah.
I personally find the monthly information to be, for a council member, not super useful, but I can certainly add it. Just the more information we add, you know, the wider the reports get and so on and so forth. But I can certainly add the monthly information. That's not hard to do. It's just a question of whether council finds it pertinent, especially considering we now do quarterly updates instead of monthly updates, like were done when those reports were originally generated. So I'll look to council to see if we want the monthly information.
I've used the quarterly reports, usually have that last month. It's just good to see like a trend, because sometimes you started off really good at the beginning, and so the numbers are higher, but you can just see a trend. So that's what I've used the monthly for, is to see if there's trends that are happening, because sometimes, you know, the beginning of that quarter was better than the end of that quarter, and you're trying to figure out what's, you know, which direction you're trending. So that was the usefulness that I have found with the monthly for the cash flow.
Yeah, but you see that, it's only 3 months, so you see what you begin and what you end the quarter, because it's only 12 weeks or so you see that trend.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is the usefulness to me, is to see how we're trending. And it's every quarter, so you see that at least the last month. It's sort of like the budget where you only get to see the actuals for the 1 year, but at least it's something.
So are you saying you want the monthly or you want the quarterly? Because what you just said.
No, it's a
sounded like
quarterly
you want the-
report. It's a quarterly report is when he brings it. And in that quarterly report is just, this report typically has a month
What I'm
and a
hearing is
full
she
year.
would like to see, in addition to this, which used to be present on the previous reports, which would be, I guess, it's 3 more columns. It would be your monthly budget, which in most cases in the expense categories was just our budget divided by 12, relative, and so that has its own set of potential noise. And then it would be your actuals for that month, and then your variance for that month.
I never saw an average. I never saw an average.
I didn't say average.
Yeah, I don't think there's.
What I'm saying is the budget on the monthly column was the average of the 12 months of budget put in that budget monthly column. Does that make sense?
Do you mean like the far right, where it has like the
far
percentages?
left,
Oh,
yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of,
I like having it. I like having a quarterly.
I like the quarterly, so that's.
With no
my
monthly?
preference. Without monthly.
Okay.
Did you want the monthly yourself?
No.
No. I mean, the quarterly is easier for me to follow, so.
I think that if there have been times in the past in which that there has been some sort of anomaly or some sort of quarter that felt a little funky. And in those cases, when there is something that needs to be further explained or that the math feels confusing, that sounds great. I would love a thorough report and those sort of charts. However, I believe that you said this, there are extra noise that can come.
Because especially in the expenditure category, we take a great deal of effort on the revenue side. I always use property tax as the best example to try to meet our cash flow forecast in the month that we expect to receive the revenue. So we do a lot of looking back and saying, okay, when did we receive property tax? Okay, 90% of property tax comes in January and May. And then there's some little amounts that come in June and a little bit that comes in September and October. And so we try to actually replicate the cash forecast with that in instances like that. In the case of our budget expenses, there are very few where people go through the effort to go in and say, I think my cash is going to come out this month versus next month. The best example where I could think of that we might want to consider it, and I always use this example in the first and second quarter and even third quarter updates with council, is fire overtime. There's a seasonality to it. So maybe we should front load that in July, August, September, October, because that's when most of their overtime is being spent, but we currently don't do that as an example. So that's an example of, I untechnically call it noise that you would see in the report, because we all kind of know that's going to happen with fire, but it would be present in those monthly numbers because we just take it and divide by 12.
All right, so for the revenue side, so I'm struggling to find, well, it's like a bunch of different numbers. So this says that the total was 105, but the 10-year budget has it at 106.
Yeah, so you want a reconciliation between the two?
Yeah, what is that from?
Well, I'd have to provide it, but I don't have that handy right now, the exact reconciliation from what the 10-year plan says to what these reports say.
Well, it's been amended, so the Q3, the report that we got then was from December, and
Yes.
as far as a 10-year plan, and it was at 105,203. Or no, 105, I think 105.7. But now it's at 106,826. So what's the increase of revenue? I didn't see.
Well, one of the increases would be in the resolution, the engineering land development has associated revenue, so I increased the revenue for that. I would need to go through
Where is that?
It's in your budget resolution. You'll see an increased revenue for engineering land development in the budget resolution.
Engineering and design?
Yeah.
The
So they will bill developers for those costs they incurred. And so the amount that they're over budget, they'll be able to bill the developers for those costs.
So they're over budget,
But they have a revenue that will come in.
but it's a
in the
bill, it's a
future.
billable.
It will be billed, yes.
And that's where the 99 goes, so that's where the revenue piece goes up, or the transfers are going up? Because both have gone up on this.
So I can't speak to the transfers off the top of my head. I would need to dig into that a little more, and I want to give you accurate information. So let me get back to you on the transfer piece.
It's got to be in the report, though.
The details of it, though, I don't have a reconciliation right in front of me. I certainly agree with the premise that the numbers are in the report, therefore it must be in the report. I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is I do not have the ability to recall every change that's been made off the top of my head, but I certainly will provide
You know
it.
what would be great for that? Is if you put the adjustments into the 10-year, then we would know.
It would just look like a lump of adjustments, and then I'd be having to still, off a memory recall, remember what all the adjustments were, which is challenging to do sometimes. So I apologize, but I'll get you that information.
But this revenue increase, it had said in the report that you're not changing the revenue increases. But it does change the revenue increase.
One exception is the 437,000 and the transfer, the loan given to parking.
Increases this revenue.
But we're
for
not
general
changing
fund.
our major revenue sources, right? We're not making any changes to our major revenue sources.
So the revenue went up from, you said we ended at 105.2, but it's at 106.8. So that's
Yeah.
a lot more than the 400,000 you're
I
talking
will
about.
certainly provide you a reconciliation between those two numbers to explain it.
Okay. And then where did this 108 come from?
When you
So
say-
the budget that we passed in the 10-year and the last amended was at 105. So I don't understand, when was this amended? By what authority?
Well,
was the
some of those would be rolling stock, is just one example off the top of my head, where we amend the budget for rolling stock and we don't put those adjustments into the actual 10-year plan, because it has a funding source. In the large scheme of things, it's a net wash.
And so we don't authorize that?
It's authorized by council policy. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm looking at Barry to see if he knows the rolling stock council policy. So you have rolling stock, you have equipment replacement, you have, if somebody donates to us, to say, somebody passes away and they want to build a bench, sometimes they'll donate money to us.
But we don't have to approve that or receive it as
No,
a council? You just put that into
those will
revenue
be
without us
administratively,
even knowing about
yeah.
it? It's administrative? you
It's
said?
It's Council Policy 416, and so those are all council policies. Clearly, the council body can change those at any time you wish.
Another adjustment to revenues that happens is we do rebudgeting for grants that are reimbursement grants. So if we know next year, use SAFER as an example, although we built that into our budget, if we knew we had a carryover for some SAFER grant amount, we would actually rebudget the revenues associated to that, because we know, we expect, given the carryover of SAFER, that we would actually see increased revenues next year as well. So that could explain some of the difference. Again, I would much prefer to provide you a full reconciliation than to sit here and spitball every potential scenario of what could be different between the report and the 10-year plan, which I think is your question.
Well, I mean, that's what we're approving, is if they match up and if the numbers
I
actually
don't think
match.
council's approving that the revenues match the report. I think council's approving the budget resolution. And I just, historically speaking, we do not make a reconciliation from these reports to the 10-year plan. That certainly can be done. It's just a lot of effort, because there's so many moving pieces administratively, that are getting appropriated all the time. So if council wants that information, I could certainly provide that information. It's just more work. My staff's pretty strapped, how it is, and so.
So you're saying we shouldn't expect to have the numbers be reconciled to the 10-year report as things are amended and decided here? Who's keeping track of all that?
Amendments that are, finance, amendments
But
that
how
are,
would we know that?
amendments that are approved by this board always go into the amended 10-year plan. I'm telling you, all the administrative amendments, I do
Oh, I
not
see.
go in and go every single it would be a ton of work to explain every single administrative amendment and then put it into the 10-year plan. I would amend it if it was something, and we could never do this, if it was something that was net going to be a draw on the general fund, I would always amend it, right? But most of these things are net neutral to the general fund. And so think about the 10-year plan as a planning tool. And so it's designed to help us make decisions in the future. It will always reconcile when we adopt the budget to the approved expenditures. After that, they start to diverge because of all these administrative items and things of that nature.
So Oh, yeah, go.
Yeah. Did she meet with you before this meeting to go over all these questions?
No, sir.
What?
Did she meet with you over all
No,
these
sir.
questions before the meeting, or no?
No, sir.
It's in
No.
the report, and
So-
I want the public
some-
to be able to hear
Yeah,
it.
I feel like we're losing the audience, but you've got about a zillion questions out here. And like, it looks unprepared. It looks like you could go to him before this meeting, answer all these questions in the whole world and come back and we can report these and clarifying, but we're just talking in circles here. You got about 100 questions and we could be here all night, but.
Did you have a question?
You have the access to go to him before this
But
meeting
that
and
doesn't
ask
help
all
the
these questions.
public,
It does
and
help the public
it
when you can
doesn't
come
help
back
the
with this
public.
information,
It doesn't
explain
help
things,
the
but you
public.
just talk in circles, question
haven't
over
talked
question
in
over
one
question, but you're not prepared.
Oh, my
You're
God.
not going to him before this meeting and doing your due diligence.
job is
We have
not to-
access to directors. We can go to directors
That's not my job.
anytime.
That's not
That
my
is your job as an
No, it
elected
isn't.
person to go
No,
to
it
him and
isn't.
ask
It's to
questions here.
actually let the public know what's happening with their finances.
You look very unprepared being here. That's all I got to say. You're not going to him
If you
asking
think that
questions.
asking questions means you're unprepared, you have no idea the job
You need to
you're
go meet
doing.
with them before these meetings before.
I've met
It
with
would
him
help-
plenty of
It would
times.
help so much for you because you look very confused up here.
Oh, my
And you're
goodness.
talking in circles, just asking zillion questions.
You would hope so, but
Ju-
that's not actually what it's
Meet
going
with
to
your
be.
directors before these
That's not
meetings,
actually
please,
what
in
it's
the
going to
future.
be.
Just meet with your directors.
I've met
Ask
with-
all these questions.
Are you all done?
I hope you're
Are y'all
done,
done?
so.
Okay, that's great. So getting back to this, in this report, as far as our cash reserves, you mentioned that it is going to be offset by the gas tax funds. Could you tell us what amount it would be offset by for gas tax?
Again, we're not done closing the year, so I can't give you the
Can I get a
exact
range?
amount.
2 million, 1 million?
So we estimated the transfer to be about 8 million when we produced this report. So I'm unsure your exact question or where you're leading
So
your
it
question.
says in here that the gas tax funds to offset eligible costs incurred and paid from the general fund. And I just wanted to know what that amount would be.
It was
'cause
about
in-
$8 million.
About 8, because in the budget,
I think it says it somewhere near there, if not right there. It says the $8 million number.
yeah, in the budget report, it said that the actual amount was 9 million. So you're saying in addition to that 9 million?
No addition. So the actual expenditure
Mm-hmm.
is reduced by certain items that the general fund actually has to pay for. Legally, we get some transfers from solid waste, wastewater, and water due to the damages they do to the roads. Those monies are then kind of pay for the first, let's call it the general fund required maintenance. So there's about $1 million roughly that is paid for out of those funds. I think Michael's actually going to talk about it a little bit in his presentation. But so that's why that number is actually lower than the actual expenses, is because of some items that are kind of paid for with general fund monies, which are the transfers from the utilities for the damages they do to our streets.
So on the actual revenue document that you gave to us, one of the new reports, it says that the amended budget was 11.6 million for the fund transfers. And then but we expended 9. That was the actual.
Yeah,
So,
the largest difference there is the forecasted streets transfer
oh, yeah,
versus
no,
the
that,
actual.
yeah. No, my question was, is that 9 million already been accounted for? So it's another 8 million on
No,
top?
it's already been accounted for. We accounted for the 8 that we expect to receive from gas tax. That number could change slightly as we close it out over the next few weeks. But we have accounted for what we believe is our best estimate at this time.
So for the reports that have so the revenue was 9 million that we actually got for gas tax, and then the expenditure looks like it's roughly 9.4.
I would have to do the math. I don't have that math handy. I certainly could do it real quick if you want to give me a second.
No, I'm just saying, this is what the actual, so that's my question. So if the money, so we're gonna-
Effectively, streets, between the transfers that the general fund makes from solid waste, wastewater, and water that get transferred in the general fund, and then we give to streets for the damages to the streets. And then the gas tax transfers, streets is made completely whole between those two sources.
And so for our general fund cash balance, we're anticipating that gas tax fund is going to be reimbursed an amount of about 8 to 9 million now? Or, because it says, up here, it says that this 10 million, it has an estimated cash transfer. Is it including that transfer, or it's going to be added?
I'm a
in addition?
little confused by your question, and I
Oh,
continue
I'll
to
just
want
read it to you. The general fund cash balance was 10.2. This was adjusted for estimated cash transfers from the gas tax funds to offset eligible costs incurred. So that's, the 10 million includes the gas tax. And I was just asking, what's that amount of that gas tax? Is it 8 million, 9 million?
I think I've answered the question. We are transferring
So
about
this
$8
$10
million.
million includes the 8 million.
Yes.
So it's already
believe so.
included.
Let me look at the report real quick. What page are you on?
2. Paragraph 1 under general fund reserves, the first sentence.
Yeah, so the cash balance in the general fund on the cash report that was included includes the estimated, at this time estimated, we
Yeah.
will know by the end of the month,
Yeah,
about approximately $8 million transferred from gas tax.
okay. And then what is the estimate? It says also will be adjusted based on these other items. So the American Rescue Plan is
Yeah,
how much?
so what I'm outlining there, and this is not a perfect outline because I don't have all these numbers finalized yet. What I'm attempting to outline is basically explaining to council, there will be adjustments to that 10.2 million, some down, some up.
Okay,
And I believe with all those adjustments, I think I end up that surmising or arriving at that our $9 million projection is good at this time. I don't see any reason for that to change with the new 10-year plan. So why I explain that is because there is this crossover from the old 10-year plan ending cash, which would say 6.8 million. And I think there's a logical question to say, well, why does the new 10-year plan say 9 million? And that was my attempt to try to explain that crosswalk from 3 different sources of information, actually. The actual cash that's sitting in our general fund, the old 10-year plan, and the new 10-year plan. And so I was attempting, again, it's super complicated. I was attempting to kind of explain to council, it's not going to be 10.3 million. It's not going to be 6.8 million. I still believe it's going to arrive somewhere right around 9 million.
yeah, I have a real, I can't find any accounting practices that the end cash is not the beginning cash. And if you are going to change it, you have to give very specifics.
To be abundantly clear, we do use ending cash audited. Once our audit is complete, we come back to this board in February and we say, here is our adjusted cash number based on the actuals adjusted for these items.
Yeah, I'm aware of the practice that you're doing. It's just not a practice I can find anywhere else, nor does it align with any of the GASB stuff that I have found. And they said when and if that were to happen, and all of the literature that I read and calling the League of Cities and asking, they said if they can itemize exactly what that is. So I'm looking for this itemization of why you think that the cash is going to change in 9 months from when it ends, not at Q4, which is the end of that fiscal year, which is September, 3 months after.
I guess I'm confused
As far
as
as
to
the
your
beginning
question.
cash, most of them said that would change end cash. So if something was adjusted, the end cash would change in February, but not the beginning cash. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay,
What is-
so let's be abundantly clear.
Yeah.
You just used 2 terms and terms are important. You said beginning and ending cash like
Yes.
they're different. So let me be clear. The ending cash of June 30, 2025 is the beginning cash 7/1/25 of our new 10-year plan.
Correct.
At this time, it is a forecasted number. We forecasted it to be 9 million. We are completing our audit. We have 10.2, 10.3 million in there right now. We will take that actual number after the completion of the audit. We will adjust it for encumbrances and things that we have carried over, and we will then bring a number to council. At this time, I believe it'll be close to 9 million. I cannot promise you that because we're still forecasting. I don't have the actual audited cash number.
Okay,
To
so-
your point, I agree with you. It's very important that we use an audited cash number that then set our beginning cash number for this 10-year, the new 10-year plan.
Yeah, we don't agree because I'm not saying that. So I'm saying when I said the word ending cash, what I meant was the end of 26. So if in February of 2026, you want to make an adjustment to cash, you would if there more money came in or something, you could make that adjustment to the end of that year, but that ship has been sailed. So cash is cash. The idea that you have audited cash is also, I can't really find that in any standard as well. So I don't know why our ending cash for this last year, Q4,
So
is
you just
not
want to
being
use 10.3 million? Is that your suggestion? I guess I'm confused
No,
by the
because
suggestion.
10.2, the 10.2 figure that you have would have encumbrances, would have other things that are involved, which is why the end cash balance is actually 6.8. So what would
No,
make.
no,
what-
6.8 is in the forecasting tool, which does not account for every piece of savings or every revenue
Correct.
performance.
Correct.
The 10-year plan is a
So
forecasting
that's where we're
tool.
starting. That's where we start, because that's how it's always been. That's how it was previous before your tenure, is that end cash was beginning cash.
No, it never matched. I've done that research. No. Never did it match. I can prove it to you if you want to come to my.
Yeah, I would love that. I'd
You're
love
just
to see
confused,
that.
so you're really confused. But, okay. I'm going to make a motion to approve this report, so.
Did that include adopting the resolution?
As far as the resolution goes, can we hear from REU why it is that the,
Oh, we have a speaker. Leslie, there you go. Great.
All right, we have a first and a second. Leslie?
Few things. The annoyance and the boredom on your faces, 3 of your faces, is echoed right here. My 5-year-old also has somewhere she'd much rather be. However, statements like, you're losing the crowd. This is not a show. This is not a TV episode. This is something you signed up for and you asked to run for. When you say, she looks unprepared, you know who looks unprepared? The people who came not having any questions to ask. The people who have said, I understand. Wait, I wrote it down. I understand. I agree. This is similar to what you've been asking for, yet then showed up without having those items, knowing exactly what she was gonna ask for. And then you want to go to social media and make a video that talks to us like we are her age and tell us, you just don't understand the budget because we took the time to go be managed by staff. We took the time to go have them placate us and tell us what to think and what to do. Not, thank you, Tanessa, sat at home and took the time to go through the report, took the time to prepare questions, took the time to find out where things don't add up, and guess what? You, and you are all up for election in 2026. And I really hope you two don't run because I have the timestamps from this behavior, and I will show the public who did the work, who asked the questions, and who wants transparency. Okay? I'm so upset I can't even read this and tell you the rest of I wrote this much notes, probably more notes than either of you came prepared with. So, I'm shaking, I can't even. I'll provide a reconciliation. Guess what? If the number that was approved is different than the number that you're presenting, maybe you should have had that reconciliation. She's been playing on my phone because I didn't plan to be here this long. Otherwise, I would have pulled up how much money you make to not have those answers. Come on.
Just out of clarity, I had why I can support this, and the point I made is, I come to these meetings, I ask the directors a zillion questions. I get on the phone, I go meet with them in person. I had a lot of questions myself, and if I'm confused on things, I definitely go there. there's times that we take this information out of our meetings with directors when we meet with them or talk to them on the phone, and we come back and sometimes we ask a question where we already know the answer, but we want to get that answer to the public itself. But the difference on myself and her is she didn't meet with the director. I did. I met with the director and had a lot of questions here myself. I spent tons of time. So I come prepared, and I try to come the most prepared I can. And I think we're supposed to flesh out questions here in different kind of dialogue here, not sit here for an hour, 2 hours asking questions that we should have really asked these questions when we met with directors. And if I want to come here prepared. I just want to make that statement every single time. I talk to Greg all the time in finance. I wrestle through all these numbers, and there's some stuff I just don't understand myself. But I want to make sure when I'm up here, I understand the information. And if I don't, then we can wrestle through that together as a council. But that's the best value we have, is to meet with our directors as often as we want. We can call them on the phone. We can meet with them in person, and they're always available. And I appreciate all the time that you spent with me, Greg. You've spent countless time with me, and I appreciate that. Thank you. So.
Mr. Curtis?
Thank you. Just before the vote, I wanted to clarify, the motion was for the recommended action, including the adoption of the resolution. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then this is probably lost since the conversation's moved on, but I do just want to make sure that the council and the public are aware, when it comes to an adjustment to ending cash based on something after the close of the year, that's not because there's new revenue that comes in, that's because of changes, corrections or changes in the accounting practices, things that may be adjusted by the auditors, things that may be adjusted that need to be attributed to different fiscal years, different sources, et cetera. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
No.
Mayor, can I ask who made the second on that? I have Vice Mayor Lata made the motion, Aaron made the second. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Webb. Oral report regarding City of Reading Public Works streets and divisions updates.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, staff, colleagues, community. This evening, I will be providing a Streets Department update, very similar to what Director Mene provided for the Community Services Department maybe 2 or 3 council meetings ago. Oh, there we go. This evening, I have 16 slides for you all, including questions. Obviously, I will be here and available for questions at the end. First, I will touch on the streets division functions. Then I will touch on the various funding sources that come into the streets department. Then I'm going to touch on a brief financial summary for the streets department. And then I will touch on one of the things that keeps me up at night, the current condition of our pavement throughout the city. I'll talk about the pavement condition index. I'll provide examples of current PCI scores within the city. And then I'll talk about a PCI funding forecast that we have for you. So first, touching on the streets division functions, some of the core assets that the streets department are responsible for are roughly 450 roadway miles. And when I say roadway miles, what I truly mean there is center lane miles. And when we convert that based on the number of lanes that are out there, we have approximately 940 lane miles of pavement that we're responsible for here at the City of Reading. And I know council has heard me talk about this prior, but just as a good reference point, one of our neighboring cities, Chico, has a very similar size population, but they roughly have about half the lane miles to maintain, about 568. Our streets department is also responsible for the 118 bridges that we have. We also have about 570 miles of sidewalk, 12,000 signs, 82 traffic signals, and 47 rectangular rapid flashing beacons. On top of the hard assets that the streets department is responsible for, we also have a traffic engineering division that is embedded within the streets department. This unit is responsible for evaluating requests for traffic control devices, which I know most, if not all of you, are very familiar with. We get requests from communities very often to put in speed tables, sign packages, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and the likes. This unit also prepares engineering studies related to speed and speed limits, commonly referred to as engineering and traffic studies, or ENTSs for short. They also maintain our traffic counts and accident data, develop projects that have a multimodal focus. They also work through a lot of the permitting process for special events and the likes of that. Now, we have we have 19.5 full-time equivalents currently in the Streets Department. And you'll notice there that I bring mention to that within the new budget cycle that we started July 1 of this year, I did work with City Manager's Office and Council and recommended it and got approved for an additional position in the Traffic Engineering Group. So we do have that new position there. But when we break down the FTEs between the Streets Department and Traffic Unit, we have 15.5 FTEs in the Streets Department. And of note there, 2.5 of those FTEs are actually made up from part-time employees. So there's roughly 4 to 5 employees that work part-time that equate up to 2.5 full-time equivalents. And then in our traffic division, we have 4 full-time equivalent positions, including the 1 new position that was authorized in the current budget. So that is a quick snapshot of what the Streets Division is responsible for from an asset perspective, as well as some of the engineering traffic duties that they provide, as well as the number of staff that we have to provide those services. So and I should have mentioned in the beginning, I will obviously be available for questions at the end, but I would encourage council to stop me or pause me if you have a question as I'm running through the presentation. So here I'm going to touch on the streets funding sources. There's a lot of information here, and I'm going to try my hardest not to simply read it off to each of you, but I'm going to try and touch on what I believe are the most important aspects of this. So you'll see at the table, on the very top right, you'll see a column labeled total. What that is showing is our total revenue for each fiscal year. Now, I would like council to keep in mind that for 23-24, that is an actual number. For 24-25, the 12.76 million that you see, that is very close to an actual number because we're still finalizing everything as Director Robinette walked through previously. And then you will notice that for 25-26 and 26-27, you will see numbers slightly over 12.3 million that represent what we expect to receive from the various revenue sources throughout those fiscal years. Now, one of the benefits that the Streets Department has is we do get a lot of information from the state regarding what our revenue, anticipated revenue sources are going to be for the upcoming years. So that is a great benefit for us from a planning perspective and removes a little bit of the volatility, from the streets revenue itself. Now, a few things I wanted to point out here that I think are of note. One, you might notice, and bear with me, I'm going to attempt to use the pointer here. Or not. In the RSTP column for 23-24, you'll notice there's a number of just under $1.4 million. And then you will notice right below it, we jump up to 1.6, and we kind of hover around there for the next couple years. That is directly attributable to changes that we've made working with CERTA and our other partner agencies to find the most appropriate use for those funds to make sure that each of the agencies within Shasta County receive the maximum amount of funding we can for street maintenance. Directly to the left of that column, you'll see the column labeled entitled TDA. And you'll notice that in 23-24, we had an actual revenue of just over 2.8 million. And then you'll notice that we have an increase of about 1.5 between 23-24 and 24-25. That is directly attributable to RABA's efforts through Assistant City Manager Steve Bade and his staff in finding creative ways and grants to fund transit operations through RABA, which ultimately frees up revenue sources for all of the agencies within Shasta County to spend on street maintenance. So I do want to highlight those two areas for council to be aware of because those are in the They are making up the biggest aspect, of the increase we're seeing in revenue between 23-24, 24-25, and the following 2 years. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions before I move on. I understand there's a lot of information to digest. Okay, moving on. And I'm happy to go back if needed later. So here, we're going to pivot from revenue to what I titled, a streets financial summary. You'll notice on the second column from the left, again, the total revenue amounts show up, and those are the same numbers that we had on the previous slide. And then we walk through, from left to right, we talk about total budget, then we talk about total expenses, and we break the expenses up into 3 primary food groups or categories, if you will, including O&M, capital, and personnel. And then we touch on carryover, which I will explain here in a few moments. So you'll notice that our revenues are hovering around that, at least after 23-24, we're hovering in that $12.5 million per year range. And you'll notice that our budget for 24-25 ended up being 19.4. And you'll notice that our adopted budgets for 25-26, 26-27 are in that low 11 range. And you'll see our expenditures, O&M, capital, and personnel. So a few things I'd like to point out here. On average, our O&M is roughly 30% of our total expenditures, with our capital costs being roughly about 47% of our total expenses, and our personnel costs making up the remainder, which is about 24%. So a pretty decent split of how we're spending the resources there. Now, keep in mind, when I say O&M, what I'm talking about there are equipment costs, fuel costs, material costs, and the likes of all that. So that's the pothole material, the crack ceiling, that's fuel, that's everything that our streets true blue maintenance crew needs and uses every day to go out there and maintain what we have. When I talk about capital projects, what I'm referring to there are projects that we're putting through the project delivery machine, for a lack of a better term, that are going through a planning process and environmental approval. We're developing full contract documents, and we're putting those out to bid, and a contractor is bidding them and building them. And then the personnel costs are just what they sound. That is what that's what it costs us to have the team to get all those projects and efforts completed. So I'm going to touch.
Can I interrupt you and ask a question just a little bit further in that O&M versus capital? How much of road maintenance, or how big is a project before it's out of O&M and into like capital? Is O&M always maintenance that's like sealing or patchwork or something along those sort of lines?
It predominantly is.
Okay.
And we do have, and that's a great question, we do have a few contracts, if you will, that do end up living in the O&M bucket, but they are more from a maintenance perspective. For example, we have a few contracts for what we would call sidewalk leveling. If you recall from a few slides ago, we have roughly 570 miles of sidewalk, and a number of our panels have moved due to tree roots or age or whatever. So we have a contract with a vendor to where our maintenance crews identify those locations, and then they issue work orders essentially for that contractor to go out there and grind down those vertical edges. We also have a similar contract with a contractor for them when those panels have been damaged well beyond the ability to be maintained. That vendor will go out and completely remove the failed panels and replace with new. We also have a striping contract, an annual contract where we put that out to bid, and for streets that are not getting any capital work in the near future, but our pavement delineation, either the striping or the markings or the markers, are not existent or need to be freshened up. Our streets crew will use that contract and the resources there to have that contractor go out there and refresh the delineation along the streets.
Cool, thank you.
So jumping back into this, I'm going to touch on the carryovers. So you'll see on the very far right column, we have a column titled carryover from PY. The PY stands for prior year. And what I'm showing there is that for the 23-24 fiscal year, we carried over, and excuse me, I might mix up some of the financial terms, so I'm going to do my very best to use the correct ones. And if Director Robinette throws something at me, you'll know that I used the wrong one. But we transferred in, or carried over, excuse me, just under $5 million into the 23-24 year, specifically for streets projects. Then for the next year, 24-25, there was just under 5.1 million transferred from the 23-24 year into the 24-25. And then right now, we are anticipating, and I'm going to try and be very clear, we are anticipating just over 10 million being transferred from the previous fiscal year, which is 24-25, into the current fiscal year, which is 25-26. Now, my team is working internally as well as with the finance department to get all the final invoices, to get the final bills. We're waiting for contractors to submit theirs. And once we have all that information, we'll have gone through the final process to determine what that actual carryover will be. But right now, we anticipate it to be roughly $10.1 million. And I have a detailed list of all the projects that make up that $10.1 million. And would be happy to provide it to council. But essentially, it's a list of about 20 projects that consist of projects where streets funds are being used as a match, like on the Bocelli project. It's projects where the streets department or the streets revenue is funding the asphalt work that we're doing along Hartnell right now. It's funding projects like we're doing for the Cape Seal and some of the subdivisions on the northern part of town, and a whole slew of other projects that are still having the books closed out, or there's final little remaining tidbits of work that need to remain, and that money will then ultimately go into the general fund, and so those bills can be paid. So I'm gonna.
Work that you've done, but you haven't collected on.
I like to think about it again, and I'm trying to stay in my lane, and I'm not the finance expert, but the work has either been completed and we haven't had to pay it yet, or it has yet to been completed and we know we're going to have to pay it in that fiscal year.
But you have the revenue already.
We have the revenue, that is correct, and that's what I'm gonna touch
So this
on.
is a billing issue. This is just getting that money in. Because
It's-
the work's gone out and
That
you
is-
have the revenue for it. It just hasn't been billed to be like finished.
That is correct, and I believe the couple numbers you see there, the 4 numbers on the bottom of this slide will help make the point you're articulating, but go ahead.
Is the carryovers, are these like carrying over year after year, or is it a new amount each year?
Essentially, what it boils down to is projects take longer than 1 year to plan, produce the contract documents for, put out to bid, and administer. And that's why the carryovers are generally in my shop and Public
Yes.
Works, because that's where the capital workload exists.
But this isn't 20 million. This is really, it just keeps going, like you're adding on.
Yeah, I would suspect that we will always have carry forwards.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be a result of projects getting established and started within one fiscal year, but not all of the expenditures will actually occur in that year. They will occur in subsequent years.
Yeah, this is the most traditional carryover that everybody's aware of and understands how it works, I would say. But I just wanted to clarify that these carryovers are accumulating. So
I would-
when you
yeah,
want more engineers, it's because you want this to be finished, I'm assuming.
That's a great point, which I can touch on here in a little bit. Yep.
That's where I was leading. I figured you would catch on, but okay.
Sometimes they can be slow.
Yeah, yeah.
But, so to finish off on that point, so you'll
If
see
I-
there's,
Just one point that I think also is relevant to paving projects, and that's paving projects are routinely bid later in the season because you want to pave in the summertime when the temperatures are hot. So
Yeah.
you see this more with paving projects than you might with a water project that can be done in the shoulder season, so.
yeah, thank you, good clarification. Yep. So the last part I was gonna touch on this slide, so there's 4 numbers you can see on the bottom there. So I worked with Director Robinette and his team to get an actual balance of the Special Gas Tax Fund and Local Transportation TDA Fund balance. I'm viewing this as the checking account that holds the revenue as it comes in from our various revenue sources. Right now, as of June 30th, there was $20.2 million in there. We anticipate, working with finance, to transfer just under 8 million or 7.9 million from that account into the general fund to cover expenses that have occurred in the 24-25 fiscal year. So that will reduce our balance in our revenue checking account, if you will, from 20 million down to about 12. And then we have that carry forward amount of approximately $10 million that will also is earmarked in that balance of 12, if you will, because we know those expenditures are going to occur. So when we take out the 8 and the 10 from our balance, we're truly left with just about 2.2 million, what I'm going to call uncommitted, unearmarked streets revenue. That is money that I could use to start a new project or add on to a contract or whatever. But that is truly how much funding, approximately, without getting to the end of or finalizing the carryovers from 24-25, there's roughly $2.2 million uncommitted in our checking account, if you will, that holds our streets revenue.
And then when do you get the next
They come in
tranche?
various waves, and I left my piece of paper on my desk that describes when those various revenue sources come in through the year, but they do come in at different times. And keep in mind, one of them, the RSTP, is a reimbursable
Right.
one, right? So we don't get all of that money. We have to spend it first, and then we can get reimbursed up to the maximum amount.
But we're starting off the year with about 2.2. We anticipate to get another 10 from the gas tax?
We should get about another 12.375,
Oh, total. So we're gonna be at about 14 and a half for the year?
including what we're gonna end this year with, yes.
Okay.
So generally, we should see the streets department putting out about $12 million worth of effort combined between O&M, or our true blue streets maintenance, our capital projects, and then our personnel costs.
No, I appreciate that comment. I've heard that fallacy in the public where people think that we're sitting on millions and millions and millions of dollars in street money and we're just choosing not to spend it. I mean, we hear stuff like that. That's not true, correct?
Yeah, we do work pretty hard to get every dollar we possibly can out there. And I do feel like I should point out, when we look at that uncommitted $2.2 million as a percentage of our average revenue, so I'm just gonna call it 12.5, we're sitting at around 18%. And I know that that's higher than the general fund council policy, but I'd like to remind this body that the type of efforts that we're doing in public works and these types of projects, I really have no idea what bids are gonna come in at for our projects. Oftentimes, our projects potentially run into issues and we have claims with our contractors. And so I would recommend that we do run with a little bit of a higher than 10% reserve for those reasons, in combination of if we have an emergency event, we likely having some cash on hand is a good thing. So I would think that running in that 15 to 20% range makes a whole lot of sense for the type of work that the streets department performs, as well as the assets that they're responsible for. Okay, so I'm gonna move on, but again, I'm happy to go back to any questions that we have. So here I'm gonna touch on, as I mentioned earlier, kind of one of the things that keeps me up at night, and this is the condition of our pavement. So first I'm gonna touch on pavement condition, and I apologize, I'm sure this body has heard this multiple times from my predecessors as well as me, but pavement condition index is a numerical rating from 0 to 100 that generally just represents the health of our paved surface. It's comprised of a number of things, including the type of pavement distress. So that could either be cracking, are we talking about fatigue, thermal, longitudinal, transverse? How much rutting is out there? Potholes, raveling. It also takes into consideration the severity of the pavement distress. How bad is it? It also takes into consideration the extent, how much of it is there, as well as the traffic loading, because obviously routes that are heavy with trucks or buses are gonna receive a higher traffic loading than a street that does not have that. Age and climate and weather are other factors that go into that. So in general, PCI is a good indicator of the health of your roadway system. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna jump through half a dozen or so slides that are meant to give visual examples to the body, or the council as a body, as well as the members of the public, because I think this is very tangible to folks. So I'm going to touch on routes that have what I would consider to be very good or good conditions, as well as mediocre, and as well as poor. And I suspect that this will resonate with pretty much everybody in the room. So here we're looking at Bocelli. Excuse me. This is Bocelli Lane looking north. This is an arterial, so a major route within the city, higher traffic volumes. And we did significant work along Bocelli a few years ago. And no surprise, right now we have a PCI score of 93, which is very good. And I think that most people that drive along that route would agree that the pavement rides very smooth and it's in a good condition. Here's an example of a residential street. This is Garden Avenue. So this is not too far from where we're sitting right now. This is a residential street, and we're looking north here again, and we're sitting at an 86 PCI. Again, this is a very good score. Pavement ride's nice, very few potholes are cracking. Here we have West Side Road. And I believe we're looking north here again. A residential street, a collector, and we're sitting at a PCI of 75. Now, I would like to point out to council that if you do look closely, you're going to start noticing a few cracks, both horizontally, which would be transverse, as well as parallel with the traveled way, which would be our longitudinal cracks. So you're starting to see some visual signs of distress there. Here we have Buenaventura Boulevard. This is looking south as you approach Placer Street. Again, this is an arterial, a major thoroughfare, and you start to see a lot of visual distress here. And based on our data, this is a 45 in the PCI world, and it's teetering right there on fair to poor. Here we have Churn Creek Road. Again, we're looking north. Churn Creek is a very busy route. It's an arterial, and you can see a lot of the crack sealing we have there and the patches and everything else, and you can even see a transition between pavement that must have been done at different times. But we're sitting here at a 43. So again, we're kind of dropping down through those conditions, and you can see a visual difference. Here we have Brandstetter. This is a collector, so not as busy as an arterial, but a little bit more traffic than a residential or a local road. Pretty beat up. You can see a lot of missing chunks of asphalt. You can see a lot of cracking. You can see that there's a need for us to get out there and crack seal, but we're sitting at a PCI of 33. And in my opinion, a road in this condition is teetering on not even be worth the value of going out and crack sealing or maintaining, because the structural condition of it is so poor that it's not a great use of the limited resources that we have. So this is a good example of one that's probably gone too long without maintenance. And I believe this is my last one. Give me 1 second here. This is East Bonneview Road looking south, another collector, PCI of 31, and I think visually all of you can understand why. So again, another road that's well beyond its useful time and is teetering on needing a complete reconstruction, probably beyond maintenance. And then I have here a picture of Butte Street, the worst of the slides that I'm showing you this evening, another residential street at a PCI of 20. So terrible condition. Definitely needs a full reconstruction, if not at least a significant rehab. Now, I should remind council, this information that I'm providing here specifically on the PCI, as well as these road conditions, is essentially the same information that City Manager Tippin provided back in April of last year. I want to say it was the 24th, thank you, regarding the unmet needs throughout the city as we kind of kicked off the budget workshops. So this is not new information, although they might be new pictures. So what I have here is a real fancy chart, and I'm gonna walk the four of you through what I'm showing here. So what I have on the vertical axis, again, is the PCI from 0 to 100, and then what I have down there on the horizontal axis are years. And I just went every 5 years to because if I showed every year, there was just too many numbers down there and it got busy. So what I'm showing is, first you'll see a solid red line, and you'll see that there's about 10 years worth of data there. That is our historical, actual PCI for our entire roadway network. And that's based on that we drive every mile of every street each year. We collect that, and we collect visual information through cameras and videos, and we upload it in a software that we have called Road AI. And then we put that into an additional software that we have that is called Street Saver. So those are actual historical network averages of our arterials, our collectors, and our local roadways. So that's actual data. And you can see that we're really kind of hovering in the high 40s, which I would imagine resonates to most individuals that traverse Reading. Now you're going to see two dashed lines to the right of that. You're going to see a dashed red line. What that represents is if we continued on the capital spending trajectory that we are on right now, which is approximately $5 million of capital projects per year. And what you're going to see is our PCI is going to continue to deteriorate. And what's happening is we're getting very close, in my opinion, to falling off what I would call the rehabilitation cliff, to where essentially too much of our pavement is beyond maintenance and it can no longer be rehabbed. It needs to be completely reconstructed. So obviously that's a concern of mine as your city engineer. Now you're going to see a blue line above that. That is a line that I've developed with my team, again, using the current conditions, the Road AI and the Street Saver software, as well as working with pavement officials that I have relationships with, on what the condition of our pavement would be if we were to spend an additional $8.5 to $10 million per year on pavement. Now that number wasn't grabbed out of thin air. It was really back calculated in order to get us up to a PCI that you're going to see is in the bottom end of the good zone that I'm indicating on the top right in the green box. Now you may ask yourself, or you may be asking yourself, why does Michael not want to go to the top of the green zone? Why is he recommending only the bottom? That's a good question. I'm recommending the bottom because that's where the best value is. We don't want to spend all of our resources and get the pavement into a condition where essentially we're overspending in pavement. We want to live in an average roadway network with a PCI of 75 to 80. What that means is our pavement is in a solid structural condition and in general good health. And really what we're doing is we're doing a lot of preventative maintenance. We're not doing very many rehabs or reconstructions, which we want to avoid as much as possible because those are the most intrusive projects to our businesses and residents. And they're also the most costly. Unfortunately, in order to get up to that PCI score of 75 to 80, there is a capital investment required, which would consist of a number of rehabilitations and reconstructions for a period of time. Once we get there, then the type of our project would pivot from rehabs and reconstructions to predominantly preventative maintenance, with select rehabs once pavement reached the end of its useful life. And that's where we want to live, because that truly is the best value when we're looking at being wise with the resources that we have. Now, there's one other thing that I would like to mention to council here. So the red line, my forecast if we were to continue on our trend, again, that is an average roadway network. So what I'm saying there is that's the average between the condition of our arterials, our collectors, as well as the local roadways, which make up 2/3 of our roadway network. So these are your residential streets where people live and their kids play out in the streets and everything. So that's 2/3 of our network. What I would be forced to do if we continue on the funding strategy or the revenue that we have, is I would be coming back to this body and recommending that we no longer spend resources on those local streets because we need to maintain our arterials and local roadways first. So if I was to make a chart like this for your arterials and a separate one for your local roadways and a separate one for the residential streets, you would see drastic differences between the arterials and the collectors and the subdivision streets. And then as that problem continued, we would see the local roadways fall off, and then most, if not all, the money would be spent on the arterials.
And none of this money includes paying for sidewalks in residential areas that don't have sidewalks right now, or?
That was not, this was a pavement-focused, and to your point, we do have a dire need with our sidewalks as well. Absolutely. I know I've thrown a lot at the council, but I am available for any questions that you all have.
I mean, just the comments that we hear, everybody talks about Victor Avenue, and I know the answer to this, but the reasons why we're not running and paving it right now, knowing that, I don't know what the score of Victor Avenue would be really right now, but you can answer this or confirm it, but it's because we're planning on paving that next year, and it'd be kind of silly to spend money right now.
That is correct. We do try and marry up our True Blue maintenance operations with our capital. It would be an unwise investment for us to go spend money in the maintenance world just to rip it up the following year with a contractor. So we do try to strategize and organize to make sure we align those operations. And we are going to be very happy to get the Victor project out next year and make those improvements. Absolutely.
We also hear from the community about bike lanes. Everybody says that all we're focused on is just putting in bike lanes. And if we could just spend more money on paving and not the bike lanes, then we'd be way better off. But you might be able to give some color to that comment.
Yeah, you know, the city's been, from my perspective, obviously I've been your public works director, city engineer for about 2 years now. But the city really has been able to hover in that PCI range because they've been successful leveraging funding opportunities through grants. A lot of those grants do come with requirements. And so the Public Works Department, specifically the engineering team and the traffic team within the streets department, have done a great job leveraging those grant opportunities, but doing them only where they make sense. We do take a hard look at when we're going to implement traffic calming measures along our roadways, and we try very hard to maintain the level of operations that our community desires, right? I could talk to you guys and gals about level of service thresholds, A, B, C, D, but that's not gonna resonate very well. The best I can explain to you is if you go drive down in San Francisco, you're gonna experience a different type of driving than you're going to experience in Redding. And people in Redding want a little bit more space between their vehicles. They don't wanna have bumper to bumper traffic. So we really strive to maintain that level of operations and safety along our roadway network. So we do not just blindly take, you know, of potentially available paved surface to put in a bike lane. We really do perform analyses, do a lot of community outreach to make sure that where we are going to implement those, it makes sense.
Yeah. Last comment or question, but I'm like super nerdy about the road, so like I love this stuff. If we had the opportunity to spend $10 million a year now, but we don't do it, but say we wait 5 more years, we would, looking at this graph, we would fall so far behind on that scoring index. We would likely have to consider spending, say, $15 million a year, say in 5 years? Or what do you think that number would look like if we wait another 5 more years to have to invest even more money?
It's hard to say. That the catch-up just becomes more expensive, to your point. And right, it could go 2 ways. We could spend more over the same period of time to get to that PCI we want within a certain number of years, or we could spend less and see if we ever get there. To your point, we're getting very close to dipping off what I call the rehabilitation cliff. And when that happens, we are going to have a number of reconstruction projects, which we haven't had very many of those in the city. And what I mean by that is I mean ripping up everything that is out there down to the virgin soil and building the road completely back up. That is a very intrusive operation. And if you were just to think about doing that along Churn Creek, Hilltop, Cypress, you're talking about every business that's out there is having to deal with temporary access in and out. Do we do that at nighttime and put light plants out there and have backup alarms all evening for the residents? It becomes very expensive to do that. And that is really why I would recommend that we need to take this information seriously and do everything we can to avoid falling off that rehabilitation cliff.
Yeah, on that slide, At the bottom, it says forecasted at 5 million per year versus forecasted at 13.5. Are we currently spending 5 million a year? Is that why that's there? Or what would you say on average we're spending?
It's 5. It
About
varies
5.
from year to year. It depends on the size of the project. It depends on the bid prices. It depends on,
But on
what-
average, we're, okay.
we feel comfortable that we're spending on average $5 million per year. And that made me think of something that I think is very valid. This is today's dollars. I have not escalated or inflated. These are today's dollars.
So anticipate a lot more.
Escalation and inflation are going to occur. And it becomes very difficult for me. I can make escalation assumptions, but I think it's always easier to provide this information without that and be clear that we're talking in today's dollars.
So if we're currently spending about 5 million a year for pavement, is there a way to increase that?
I'm going to stay in my lane here because I believe the city manager is going to touch on that in the next presentation.
For our current budget?
I think he'll discuss what options are if we were to desire to.
Yeah, unless
Well,
that,
like-
unless that question is relative to our current streets budget.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
like for what that earlier, just, yeah, like for what that earlier slide showed, like O&M versus capital, like, is there a way to switch that and increase, or are we committed on capital projects for the near future or for like 10 years out, or how much have you already committed to that?
So
What?
He was laughing at me.
So certainly, obviously, we have flexibility between those. I think I refer to them as 3 food groups: O&M, capital, and personnel. Obviously, we want to put every dollar possible into the infrastructure, but I would remind council that really the O&M is also providing a critical service because they provide a lot of pavement maintenance, right? So if we were to take funding from them and shift it purely to the capital project, we're missing out on a lot of that day-to-day maintenance that the crews perform, like potholes and crack sealing. And that is a very critical element of the pavement life cycle. So I would be hesitant to take very much, if any, from our day-to-day O&M operations. But obviously, we look at that as much as possible. And then on the personnel side, we need staff to put the projects out and do the work.
Yeah, I was mostly just thinking the O&M and capital and how much flexibility you had between that to put towards, but I get it.
Thank you.
I don't really have, you answered my questions that I had. I just wanted to say thank you for this information. I don't think that when I came on to council the first time that I was expecting as many complaints that we receive about roads, but as you are aware, it is the most frequent and common email judgment that we get. So thank you for that information, for the data. It's extremely useful for us, especially when we're explaining to members of the community.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
9.11. Mr. Tippin, identify impact to the general fund if an additional $10 million annually was redirected for street maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have the remote, so I'm gonna look at Aaron or something to, or Steve's gonna grab it. So this item actually was item 12 in August, and at the same time, you'd requested these monthly updates from the departments. So clearly, it's not a coincidence that this item fell also where Public Works and Michael would give his presentation regarding streets so that we'd have a good context of where we're starting from and where we're going. And so this item is really directed at if we were to redirect money from the current general fund to streets maintenance, what might that look like in terms of impacting other planned expenditures within the general fund? And so that's the purpose of this. I have a number of disclaimers that I put in here because this is a super high level exercise. I mean, I did this myself. I did not involve all of the departments. You can imagine this type of discussion gets a lot of nervousness, I did ask for some information from finance in terms of individual expenditures, and I did ask for information on impacts from the department directors. But $10 million, as you see in that first bullet point, we've got about a $65 million discretionary budget, and that's just money that you have available to choose to do whatever you want with. So the $10 million represents about 15% of that. This is not a detailed analysis or identifies any implementation steps. And what I mean by that is, some of the expenditures that I list are really for a high-level discussion, because it doesn't take into account perhaps that some of those have some other funding sources currently embedded in that, whether it's a SAFER grant or whether it's REU wildfire. I figured that would be a much more complicated effort, and it's probably not what you were really looking for. So that does not include this. It doesn't include any future actual reductions that would happen, because that obviously requires much more detailed analysis. I can tell you that the most representative time in the city's history was the Great Recession, where we lost $7 million in about a year in sales tax alone, when that number was $24 million at the time. And it was hours upon hours upon hours of analysis and work within departments to bring recommendations back to council. So I just want to make sure everybody understands the level that this is at. Oh, for sure.
Ever been discussed? It just would, because he's Public Works, it makes me think, why isn't streets part of the Public Works? Or would we ever use Public Works budget for streets? I know it's in there because it's the gas tax. I understand how that mechanisms work.
Well, streets hasn't always been in Public Works. So streets its own account, right? So
Right.
When I first came to work at the city, streets actually existed under municipal utilities.
Right.
And then in 2006, it was moved under engineering and transportation. So streets has always been sort of its own bucket and transferred around
And it just
into various
moves
accounts.
around.
Yeah, and so after the Great Recession is part of what caused Public Works to get reformed. Because as we were consolidating and eliminating director positions, we started, building back up certain departments like Public Works. And so Public Works came about because of the Great Recession, really.
So is it possible to think of a budget for streets coming from the Public Works Department and not general fund?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah,
Is that even a
it's really a
possibility?
Public Works function, but the amount of where the money is actually held is the general fund. Yeah.
Would it be worth to have a discussion about if it could come from enterprise funds and not from general?
It's probably not an enterprise fund just because of the nature of what enterprise funds are. They're self-supporting. They are usually rate-based. They have application to Proposition 218. So there's other fundamental issues. From
So
an
it has to live
accounting,
under
well,
the
from an
general fund.
accounting perspective, I would have to talk to finance and Mr. Robinette about whether that would make sense or not. It's perhaps possible to move the account over there. We could have to talk. We could discuss that maybe
But
within the next
not,
budget.
but it wouldn't be pulling from any of those funds?
No, it would not.
That's my question.
It would not.
Okay. I don't mean where it lives, but I was just curious
Yeah.
if there's a different,
I do want to just highlight that Mr. Robinette did point out you do have some situations where you have been able to use funds from utilities that have impacts on the roads.
yes,
To be able to
yes,
offset.
yeah, that was
But-
in the report. yeah.
But under Prop 26 and under Prop 218, you're limited in your ability to essentially redirect funds from those purposes. So it's really got to be limited to their direct impacts on the roads to the extent that you're able to take those away and then repurpose those. Otherwise, you'd be running into legal issues.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you asked that question, because this does focus only on general fund
Yeah,
and only
I
on the
was just
discretionary,
curious. Yeah,
because really the other elements where we have opportunity to transfer money, we pretty much have.
Yes, yes.
So,
Yes.
because obviously streets has been a problem for a long, long time. So, okay, so this only doesn't include the issues that we'd have with labor groups depending on where we'd make cuts, right? And it also doesn't address all of our other infrastructure needs. Just, we've had these big conversations about everything else, so I don't want to get just caught up on streets as the only thing we have, because as you recall, the big presentation on fire stations, we have about $85 to $100 million worth of fire station needs as well. And then the caveat again, these are just illustrative. This is not anything I am recommending at this time. So just for context, because we hear these types of things all the time. So if you eliminated every director in the entire city of Reading, it's about $1.7 million to the general fund. And that's because obviously the other utilities pay for cost allocation, internal service funds, and that sort of thing. If you decided that, hey, we still need to keep a fire chief and police chief, then that number goes down to about $1 million. And that's because the fire chief and police chief largely are the only ones that are fully funded by general fund. Similarly, if the council said, you know what, we don't need general government. So that's city manager's office, city attorney's office, city clerk's office, financial services, parts of personnel. The savings to the general fund would be $2.1 million. And that's because so many of those services are paid for by the utilities, right? Because the utilities need payroll done, they need financial work, they need personnel, they need hiring, they need all of that stuff. So the reality, if you look at general government, when you include all the costs borne by the utilities, it's about $6.5 million total cost to support our $550 million budget. So we spend about 1.2% of our total budget in general government. And lastly, with any reduction, it's unlikely the city council would be able to support other things that don't technically cost us money right now, and that's the sports park, the civic auditorium, the arts council, airports, et cetera. We would not be able to continue to assist those likely if you're going to make these types of cuts. So just things to think about. Now we're getting into the meat of it. Michael just told us the solution, so I figured I'd just put it in there, about $10 million a year, and that's what the request was from the council. So I'll go through these relatively fast. I did two options. One is looking at staff and programs, and the other was assuming that the council wanted to keep all the various programs like recreation programs. And so it's essentially just staff. So I'll go through those quick. The real brief impacts to these are up there. I'm not going to go through those in detail. Certainly you can look at them. I think you'll know what they all are. If we reduce police officers, we have lower response times, higher burnout, difficult recruitments, all sorts of things. So option one, police department. So if we eliminated 5 officers, 3 detectives, 8 CSOs, and 3 support staff positions, the total savings would be around $2.4 million. And of course, significant impacts on not only the police department and our staff, but also on the community and their expected service levels. Likewise, with the fire department, if we eliminated a deputy chief, 2 prevention officer positions, and closed the fire station, it's about $2.1 million. And again, significant issues with our service levels for the community, whether it's land development and inability to process those, to just simple response times as we'd be covering the entire city with a lesser station. Community services. This is one that actually gets pretty big and pretty surprising if you think about it. So recreation programs eliminated, 4 parks maintenance positions, closed the library, and sorry, Todd, if you're still here, I think you are, cancel the rest of the Visit Reading contract. That's about $3.8 million that would be available. Development services, full cost recovery model. So that's about 1.5 that we could expect there. Obviously, that's, probably would not fully realize that because we had lower costs, plus we'd have people who wouldn't come get permits because they're too expensive, and we'd have increased code enforcement costs. And so, again, it's just illustrative. If we went to the general government, took a position from my office, took 2 positions from finance, 1 position from the city attorney's office, it's about $182,000. And that's because those offices are paid for by the utilities as well. So they're providing services not only to the general fund, but all of the utilities and every other department. So you only get about a 30% savings. So about 30 cents on every dollar is what you can claim in general fund savings. So in summary, if you're looking at staff and programs, that sums up to about $10 million, just over $10 million. So if we go to maintaining some of those programs, obviously it gets a lot worse when you're talking about staff. Now we're up to 12 officer positions, 3 detectives, 1 captain, 10 CSOs, and 3 support staff positions. Those numbers are picked because it represents 98 sworn officers, which is our low point in recent history. And so we have been there, so I just took us back to there as an example. That's about 3.9, almost $4 million. Fire department, largely the same, except for we're now talking 2 fire stations at 2.8. Community services, now that was way down because now we're continuing to provide the recreation programs, the library remains open. And so that savings, even though I added 2 parks positions to eliminate, that's about 600,000. Development services, now we're maintaining the same cost structure for our, those who want to have permits, but we take 4 positions out of there, so obviously we're impacting our ability to actually deliver permits to individuals. That's about 400,000. Miscellaneous, the realistic option here would be, I don't know how realistic it actually is, but like a 15% cut to all of the unrepresented managers. Likely you probably wouldn't do that, but this is just for context because REU obviously wouldn't save you a dime. But that's about $570,000 if you were to do that. In the box, I actually said, well, what if you just cut all the directors by 1/2? You know, their salary gets cut in half. That's about $1.9 million. I didn't use that in the final calculation, but just again for some context in terms of what that number is. And then if you just started to go, okay, we just have to actually sort of start nipping and tucking. It really goes into the internal service funds, and they have cost to the general fund somewhere between 25 and 40%, sort of depending on where they're at. I used about 30% as just a general average. So we need about 800,000. You'll see that we're a little high on the 10 million, but I used 800,000. So that's 20 plus employees, depending on who they are and where they come from. That would be reduced from the internal service funds. That's IT, that's your fleet maintenance, that's your records and those types of positions, employer services. And so in order to get that number up, it's 20 plus employees.
I know that you said this, can you go back to 1? I know that you said this out loud, but I just wanted to, because it's on the screen, you meant unrepresented managers, all of them, right? I know that your salary gets talked about a lot, so I wanted to make sure that reducing your pay by 15% did not look like 575.
Yeah, that's all, that's every single unrepresented manager. So unfortunately, that's James, that's Josh, that's Ryan. Yeah. That's about 111 total employees,
111
yes.
are unrepresented management?
Correct.
Okay.
Most of those are REU. So REU has a lower level of unrepresented individuals like electrical engineers. So they have a broader swath of them in REU than you see in the other departments, whereas in Public Works, like I just unfortunately pointed out for those gentlemen, below them is largely going to be represented employees.
So this 111 for unrepresented, it's not 111? Or is that the
No,
general
it's
fund?
111.
Oh, the general fund, it's 111.
No, it's 111 of unrepresented managers.
Okay, but
So
for the
general
purposes
fund,
of
I don't know
this-
the exact number. General fund is much, much lower than that for just general fund. And in fact, for just general fund, it's probably your police chief, fire chief, and deputy fire chiefs. That's it. For just general fund. Because my position, Steve's position,
Oh, I
Christian's
see what you
position
mean.
is
I
all
see-
funded
I see
by
what you
other
mean.
departments.
I see what
So you're only taking bits and pieces from their salaries.
So then what's this number represent?
The 570?
Yeah.
That's a 15% reduction of.
Just for the general fund?
Well, I just did it across all of them. But that's the general fund savings.
The general fund
So
savings.
you got,
I just wanted to make sure.
Tony Van
They're just
Bokel, for
saying
instance,
different
is an
things.
internal service fund, so that director position does have value to the general fund, but it's only about 30%.
So it's 111 employees, but it's obviously the ratio is going to be different for.
Yeah, because
Because it's
I don't know
15%
that, I don't know the
from just
number.
the general fund amount.
The biggest number of that 111 is in REU.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so obviously there'd be zero value to the general fund by reducing them. That's why I said largely you wouldn't do that. But frankly, we did do some of that during the Great Recession for parity, and it
Yep.
didn't work out so well for us.
Yep.
Well, maybe it did. We got Nick. So then
There's that.
the general government, is basically the same as we had before at 182,000. Summarize that, you get about 10.26 million with all of those reductions. And so, again, that's just a real fast look, and it just gives you an idea of the types of impacts that you would be looking at if you truly just wanted to take our current $10 million of general fund money and push to streets maintenance. the types of changes you'd have to make, especially if you wanted to make that an annualized change. And with that, I'm available for any questions, as well as I'm sure some of the directors are available to come up here and talk about their impacts.
Mr. Liddell.
This is like your last report. This is
Yeah, fun, right?
doom and
Begging
gloom
for
one.
money.
Yeah,
Doom and gloom one, yeah. I think this is important to do today. It strikes back from some comments Councilor Danuka said many meetings ago. He says, our city, we just have a revenue problem. And just looking at our entire budget, there's so much that we want to do, that we need to do. And how are we ever going to do all this stuff unless we increase revenue? And, most of our revenue is sales tax and property tax, and that just doesn't double overnight. I mean, there's so much unmet needs that we really have here. Just for full transparency, I don't think anybody in the council is really advertising or promoting saying to cut public safety and saying, hey, we should be doing this right away. That's just not a good thing. And that's not what the public is saying, is to go cut police officers and firefighters, because we find very much big value to that. That's the core of our city, is making people feel safe and protected. And so we appreciate everybody in public safety. A lot of sacrifices you make out there, and we need you. The roads are a big problem. The roads is what we drive on every single day, and they're just going to get more and more expensive. And this has been something I've heard before I was elected here. I've heard this rhetoric about the roads 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It seems like it's a constant theme that just becomes a driving force that we just hear more and more and more, and it's just going to become even more expensive. And the scary part is someday there might be conversations within city council that says the roads just deteriorated so bad that there might be painful cuts. And where do you get those cuts? As we say, 85% of all our money and discretionary funds go straight to public safety. But the public wants it all. The public wants the roads fixed. They want them to look pristine. They want public safety. They want everything, but we can't get it all. And how are we going to get there? And that's a problem that we have as a city, is how to get this revenue to do all the things that we dream of to build this community. And that's another constant theme I've heard Councilor Danuka says is, in the end, we have to make decisions to say what's best for the community, what's best for the city. We live here. This is a place we want to be. This is a place that we want to be for many, many years, and we want to see our children stay here and our grandchildren stay here. But to effectively do that, we have to have great community. And that does mean good public safety. It means good roads. It means having a civic center. It means having parks, places that we can go to do fun things, So this is a tough problem, and there's no answer for it, and there's no good answer for these roads. But we've demonstrated today is very painful choices that the city and the residents need to see, is if you want it all, if you want good roads, but you value public safety, which one do you want? Because without increase in revenue, we're not going to get this stuff. And it's just going to be a constant discussion that's going to come over and over again. So I just think it's very valuable that we brought this presentation, probably the best one we've seen in many, many years, just to paint a picture of what we need to do. Because we've never really been presented a solution ever in the past that says, how are we going to do it, right? All we say is we just don't spend enough towards the roads, and we need to do more. We have a big problem here. We just don't have the revenue to do it. So that's my comments.
I just wanted to say thank you for the information. That's all.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, we shall move on. Council travel reports. Oh, none. Oh. All right. Item 12, Aaron.
I didn't
So you're getting ready to hit the button.
I didn't even get to hit my button. I have two. The first one, and maybe I misunderstood what Director Webb was suggesting, but is anybody interested in bringing back, changing that council policy from 10%? Did I understand that correctly? 10%?
So I do think there's a little bit of confusion on that one. I think you're referring to the question about the reserve policy and the 10%.
Yes. That's not an actual council policy?
Yeah, I believe the council policy refers to the general reserve percentage. I'll look to Mr. Tippin to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, there is no council policy. And actually, Director Webb and I today talked about maybe him taking a stab, given the state of finances today versus years past, not only in streets, but also in the water utility, where we have drought requirements and, reduced water usage requirements, but we have increasing costs and ever increasing regulatory pressures in wastewater and solid waste. that, developing some fashion of financial management policy similar to what you have in RU to help guide the discussion in terms of what reserves should be, what are the metrics around rates and that sort of thing. When do you bond, when do you not bond, or those types of things. And so I think he's going to be considering that over the next year, and
Perfect.
we'll be coming back with you if he has a solution to that.
Perfect.
And clarifying question with that, on that reserve policy, was that a reserve policy that says we can never have less than that in the
No,
roads,
he
or we
was
can't
saying,
have
no,
more
he
than
was saying
that?
it's like, he just meant it was general. You can clarify.
I thought you meant like we can't have more than that dollar amount.
Yeah.
Is that what I
He
was
just
thinking?
meant common
Don't go
practice.
spend it,
What
because
he's-
he wants to keep
yeah.
a buffer. Like,
Yeah.
meaning, because there's 2 million, don't feel like, go spend it right now. Like,
Exactly.
he wants a buffer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just for general information, your general reserve buffer is not necessarily going to line up with the buffer that you may have in individual accounts for different reasons. So
Right.
it's not uncommon to have both the general reserve and special reserve, based on the needs of particular operations.
Then I look forward to what you come back to us with. And I'm glad that that was already an item that you thought was valuable to us, and I obviously agree. My second item is that last week it was brought to my attention that Advanced Reading had made multiple large donations in our community, including contributions towards the Citizen Sales Tax Initiative and to the Denver flight. I should probably note that, and I'm pretty sure it's true for the rest of council, but I can't speak for everybody, but I haven't had any involvement in the sales tax committee, so that was new to me. It's citizen-led, and therefore, in my personal opinion, it's not something that city council members should be getting in the middle of. When council agreed to release that $675 from the sale of the Sheraton, it was to hold Advanced Reading over and to keep the doors open. But with this new information, I would like to revisit the item and explore any sort of alternative options. Does anybody have any consideration?
Yeah, well, it's not as easy as that. The lease agreements and the grant agreements have all been signed and are in the hands of Advanced Reading. So, Mr. Curtis, can you enlighten us a little bit?
Yeah, so if you want, I can't tell you off the top of my head, what the terms might be and whether there might be termination clauses or anything that might allow for anything to be recouped. If you wanted an item to come back, we could take a look at that, give you the analysis. It's possible that the answer is that there's not really much you can do, but if that's what the council would like to look at, we could certainly do that and bring it back to you. Other option is, if you'd like, I can simply do that analysis, give it to you, and then you could bring forward another item 12 if you felt it was appropriate at that time. Downside would be there'd probably be a little bit more delay, so there's possibility of more expenditure and more loss if that is the case.
So just for your information, factual information, it was executed on September 8th, so it's been in effect for a little while. And it has a 30-day cancellation clause. It states that if the council were to do that, after 30 days, whatever money has not been spent could be returned. So in effect, they could have spent it all and you could have zero back. So I just put that as information as you decide whether consensus to bring it back exists or not.
Was it on a reimbursement, or did they get the full amount? I thought they had to submit for
They got the
reimbursement.
full amount.
Oh, they got the full
Yeah,
amount? Oh.
yeah.
I would love to know what our options are, and I would like to know what our sort of financial options are here and moving forward, because I think that it is highly likely that the city is going to need that money to shutter the Civic. And so whether or not they would be willing to have those conversations with us now while they've potentially not used all of that money then.
Yeah, so if there's a consensus on the council to bring that back, I think we can arrange that and obviously let Advanced Reading know, so.
I'm not in favor.
I think it's highly likely the money's gonna be spent by the time it could come back, which means we're opening up a can of worms of discussion that in the reality, we might have given them the money anyways had we known they donated the money, just because the fact that they support the sales tax initiative means, sure, they're on life support. They're doing everything they can to keep the doors open, and they need from their perspective, they need the sales tax initiative. And so can't complain so much that they donated money to something for their own survival. But yet this money that has been infused is still going towards their operating expenses. I don't know what we would have done differently, but I think the money's going to be all spent, and maybe it could come back if we confirm there's still money that we could take back. But we would have to, if we find out that the money's already been all spent and we're not going to do anything, I don't know if that would be worth coming back.
Would you entertain, go ahead.
Oh, well, if it's defined, I mean, along with what Mike said, like, yes, but, and then if it comes back and it's already been spent, then we have to have that conversation. So,
If you
Yeah.
wanted to take any action, essentially you need to tell us now that you want us to put that on a future agenda. It could be that when we bring that forward, the money's been spent. It could be that when we bring it forward, you do have options. And
yeah.
we just
I mean, if
can't tell you
that's
that
Mike
today.
and, yeah, if that's,
Would you want that to come back if they find out that they've already spent all the money and they just pull the item from the agenda, or do you want it to come back no matter what?
I don't think that we have it sounds like that if there happen to be options, we would need it to be on an agenda to be able to discuss
in the
it
30 days.
within the 30 days. So that is my suggestion or request, is could we put it on as an agenda item to discuss what our options are? It may be that we have 0 options, in which case I suppose staff could pull it from agenda or something. We get edits.
Yeah, so is that a consensus?
I would be fine as long as we pull the item. If we find out there's no recourse and there's, you confirm it.
I would encourage you to actually be more definitive, because, you know, there's just a lot of squish there. And
Maybe
I
it
think
would be-
staff would just bring it back. I don't think we would pull it
That's-
once the council said bring it.
Maybe that would be it could just be informational only. If we find out that we don't have any options, then the report is we have no options.
Yeah, I think what we would probably couch it as, you know, receive the report and provide direction to staff. And so
Okay.
that the
Sounds
council
great.
can just decide
there's
what you
none.
wish to do.
If
No options.
Yeah.
And
so-
what's the date for 30 days?
Well, so the 30 days is your term clause.
Right.
So
So what is that date?
I
Well-
believe 30 days notice. So
Yeah.
from the
Yes.
date that you gave notice, it would be 30 days after that.
Right.
So
At
October
which
8th
point,
or?
No, if you did October 7th as a termination, it would be expired 30 days from then.
in November. So
So
I
it's,
got you.
it'll be,
gotcha.
it'll be
Oh,
a
oh, oh.
contract for
Sorry.
2
I
months.
misunderstood.
It will have been a contract from September 8th to
Okay.
November 7th.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So we'll agendize that. Won't you, Steve?
Thank you, Steve. Yes, I don't have anything else.